Mhm. Good morning, beautiful people who are checking in. Glad to see you all here. Let me set my timer here. What time is it? 8:12. Give ourselves 48 minutes. All right, timer is on. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday. Happy tax day to everybody out there. Hopefully, everybody has taken care of your tax burdens for 2024, fiscal year 2024. Now we're in 2025. Nikki, good morning. Glad to see you here. Courtney, good morning to you. Glad to see you here. Thank you for the gift early. I didn't even deliver yet, so glad you give me a gift before I even deliver. Hopefully, I'm good. Someone said, "Do I help with taxes?" I am not an accountant, so no, I do not. What we are going to talk about here today, I will tell you all that, is we're only going to talk about two topics here today. I usually talk about one, but I think these are two topics that between the two of them will fill our time, maybe even more than that, depending on the conversation. We're going to talk about, number one, this situation with President Donald Trump and the Supreme Court of the United States, because the Supreme Court basically ruled that Donald Trump is supposed to do something, and Donald Trump is basically saying, no, I'm not going to do it. That's one thing. And the other thing we got to talk about is this case down in Texas where the black kid stabbed the white kid over some type of confrontation they had at a school event. And the black kid got charged with murder in the state of Texas. And it was set that he had $1 million bond. In other words, to get out of incarceration before his trial, he had to put up $1 million and is actually, I believe it's 10%. So it would have been $100,000. He didn't have the $100,000 yet. But then the courts ruled, the judge in the case, who is a black woman, and that matters because we're going to talk about that. She ruled that his bail does not need to be $100,000. It could be reduced to $250,000, which she did. She reduced it to $250,000. And then he posted that. And now the kid got out of jail. So he's at home on house arrest. We'll talk about that. So those are the two topics we're going to discuss here today. I'm sure there are plenty of opinions on both of these. So let's get straight to it. Let me introduce myself first. Good morning, Carla, over there on TikTok. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. Former 9-year professional athlete, author of 41 books on 4 TEDx talks. I run this company called Work on Your Game. What we do is help professionals systematize and scale their businesses from 6 to 7 figures. I am not a lawyer. I am not an accountant. I cannot help you with the taxes. I cannot defend you in the court of law, but I give you some information on both of those. Again, none of them are legal advice or financial advice. Please consult a professional before taking making any decisions or any moves, whether medically, legally, financially, otherwise. All right, all that out of the way. Let's start with the Donald Trump one, because I think this one will be a shorter one. So those of you who don't know what happened with the Donald Trump case, there was a person who got, that Donald Trump and Tom Homan, who's known as the border czar, they're doing this America First thing, and they're getting all the people who are in this country illegally out of the country. All right, all of you are familiar with that's what we're doing. So all these people are being illegally, or who are here illegally, and they don't have proper documentation, being shipped out of the country. So recently there was a man who was shipped out of the country by the United States. They ship a lot of people out, but one particular person, there's this whole case and whole argument about it. And there are so many legal details in it that you really have to be a legal beagle to really be able to parse it. I don't think it's even worth going through all the details of it. I heard Megyn Kelly talk about it, and even her, you had to kind of slow down and listen to it more than once to get all the special details of how it happened and went from this case, this court to this court, and this judge to that judge. And there's all this back and forth. Long story short, the Supreme Court has basically they have ruled that this individual must be returned back to the United States. This person got kicked out of the United States, and he's in an El Salvadorian prison right now. And this person's name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And there's a whole argument about, is this guy actually part of this gang in another country? Or is he not part of the gang? Should he be deported? Should he not be deported? He has a family here in the United States. Is this okay? Is it not okay? Supreme Court has basically said you have to bring this guy back to the United States. But the president of El Salvador, his name is President Bukele, I think that's his last name. He said he is not going to send this guy back. And Donald Trump is saying, and he had told the press that he would bring anybody back who was wrongfully shipped out. But then he is saying he's not going to do it after the Supreme Court is ruling that he's supposed to do it. So this has become this big conversation because people are like, well, if the Supreme Court rules something and the president decides to not follow it, that's like one of the three branches of government basically ignoring the other branch. So the president is the executive branch. The Supreme Court is the judicial branch. And he is pretty much ignoring the judicial branch and what they're saying. The issue is what this really comes down to is not so much about Trump going back on his word. If you believe he did, okay, fine. And what's your point? And if you believe he has to follow his word, okay. And again, what's your point? What is he actually going to do is all that actually matters. And the thing is, the Supreme Court does not have policing powers. Now, why does this matter? Because the local jurisdiction, let's say where you live, like if you live in, let's just take down here in South Florida, you get a parking ticket, or let's say a parking ticket or a moving violation ticket, like a speeding ticket. The court has policing powers. So if you get a parking ticket and you don't pay the parking ticket, eventually the police will find that vehicle. Eventually they'll find that vehicle, notice that you have a bunch of parking bills, let's say, that you never paid, and they can put a boot on your car. You ever seen a car with one of those boots on it? Basically renders the car immovable. You can't move the car until you get that boot removed. And to get the boot removed, you have to settle the balance of everything that you owe. So they can go and do something to basically hinder you from operating your vehicle until you pay that bill that you're supposed to pay. Maybe after that, they might take your car, they might impound it, and they may even get to the point of putting you in jail if you don't pay those bills that you have accumulated. The Supreme Court does not have that type of power to call the cops and have them do something, even after they give a ruling, if you decide to not follow it. Especially when it comes to the president. So many people don't like hearing this on social media. There's some people who push back. I pointed this out, but many people didn't like hearing it on X. A lot of people were pushing back on this. The Supreme Court does not have policing or enforcement powers. A lot of people don't know that, but they really don't. In other words, they can interpret the law and rules based on constitutional issues. They can interpret the law and rules of constitutional issues based on the way they decide to see it, they being the 9 justices on the Supreme Court. But it does not have any direct enforcement mechanism. And this is, I don't know, for some people might consider this scary, but it's similar to our money system. Y'all all understand that the money that we have in the United States, the numbers in your bank account and the dollars in your wallet, that money is not actually worth anything, because it's not backed by gold. That money is only worth something because we all believe that it's worth something. But if we all stop believing that it's worth anything, then the money becomes completely worthless. And I don't know if I want to say the Supreme Court is worthless. I'm not going to go that far, but I will say they do not have direct enforcement mechanisms. They don't have it. So what they do, the Supreme Court literally relies on the executive branch, i.e. the president, and the federal agencies that the president has call over to enforce its rulings, and the legislative branch, i.e. Congress, to support its authority through law and funding. So since the Supreme Court depends on the other two branches to enforce its own rulings, and now that one of those other two branches is defying the Supreme Court, so is one branch against the other branch, well, then apparently it seems that the deciding vote is going to be cast by Congress. Problem is that Congress is Republican, and that might not go so well for the Supreme Court. This is the issue right now. So their rulings of the Supreme Court is only as effective as the other branch's willingness to comply with the rulings. And even if the Supreme Court happens to make a decision that goes against the grain of what Congress wants to do, the legislative branch, the difference with Congress is that there's a lot of people in Congress. So you're probably not going to get, even if you have one or two people who want to go rogue and go against SCOTUS, SCOTUS, that's Supreme Court of the United States, for those who don't know the acronym. If you get one or two Congress people want to go rogue, or even 30 of them, is 500 plus people in Congress. So they're probably going to comply. But when you have the president, who's one person, especially this president, who seems to be different than every other president we've seen, this is the issue. So this is a key principle of how checks and balances work. The court can issue a ruling, but if the president decides he doesn't want to enforce the ruling, or Congress does not support the ruling, the decision is pretty much ineffective. It doesn't actually mean anything, even though it is technically legally binding, but is rendered completely ineffective. And what some people would argue, I'm sure some of you who are listening to this right now may argue, is that Donald Trump openly defying a ruling of the Supreme Court is basically undermining the integrity and the efficacy and the value of the Supreme Court itself. He's basically saying, okay, you all made a ruling and I'm not going to do anything that you said. I'm just not going to do it. Well, then why does anybody else need to listen to the Supreme Court? Is a rhetorical question people can ask. Reason other people need to listen because they don't have the same power that Donald Trump has. So the bottom line is the Supreme Court all depends on the executive branch's will to enforce any rulings. Supreme Court cannot call in the army. It cannot call the cops, and it doesn't control any budgets. So it can't really do anything. All they have is a power of legal authority, and they have public legitimacy because everybody looks at the Supreme Court as the highest court in the nation, which it is. The issue is now with this Trump situation, we'll see how it works out. I generally think it's going to work out and everybody's going to be fine. I think this is a short-term thing that, people just go crazy over everything that Trump does or says or doesn't do, doesn't say, or allegedly is thinking. I think they're going to work this all out. Trump seems to be pretty good at making deals and working things out. But the Supreme Court can't call the cops on you if you decide to ignore what they said. They can't actually do anything. So in this situation, when the Supreme Court is ruling against the president, because that's a different thing, because the whole thing is, what the frame I just gave you is that every time the Supreme Court makes a ruling, the executive branch can enforce what the Supreme Court said. They can call the cops. But if the Supreme Court makes a ruling against the executive branch, now what do? That's the issue. This becomes what we have right now, and you hear a lot of people saying this, a constitutional crisis. If this goes on, this becomes a constitutional crisis because the president is flat out refusing to follow a Supreme Court ruling. This is a situation where the basic structure of the U.S. government is under stress because one branch is refusing to follow the rules that they are supposed to be following. That's the reason why we have three branches. You can't just ignore what the other branch says. It's kind of like if Congress votes on something and they decide that that's what it is, and the president just says, well, we're not going to do it. Or the Supreme Court just says, all right, we're not going to do what Congress says. Son, I'm recording. Okay, you can come in here, but not too much noise. Okay? All right, see you later. So this becomes a constitutional crisis. That's what we have going on right now. And there is no automatic punishment for this, even though, again, a lot of people who have maybe some remnants of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, may want there to be some automatic punishment. There really is not. The SWAT team is not going to show up at the White House. They're not going to arrest Donald Trump. There is no legal mechanism for the Supreme Court to force Trump to do anything. And some people, again, want to believe that there is not. They can't do that. Now, Congress can step in. That's what can happen. Congress can step in and they can respond with something like an investigation. They may have a hearing. They probably will have a hearing. That's all Congress does is hearings and making bills that could possibly become laws. All Congress does. If y'all follow how Congress operates and you see it, it's actually pretty boring. The stuff that the social media stuff we see can be exciting, but generally working in Congress is very boring. You're sitting in hearings for like 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, or if you're listening to Cory, what's the guy's name from Jersey? Cory Booker. Listen to Cory Booker 25 hours and people just babbling and babbling and babbling, trying to make themselves sound important. That's what it's actually like to be in Congress. The same way that being a lawyer, again, this is from what I've heard. The same way that being a lawyer, many people think is like you're Matlock or you're like the guys on Law and Order and it's just action all day when really it's just a whole bunch of paperwork and briefings and details. It's not as exciting as it looks from the outside looking in, again, or so I've heard. So anyway, with Congress, they are probably going to have a hearing. And in extreme cases, they could probably try to impeach Donald Trump. Just for clarity, a lot of people don't understand what impeachment means. Impeachment does not mean that the president gets removed. Y'all probably already understand that because Bill Clinton got impeached for the Monica Lewinsky thing. He didn't get removed. He just got impeached. Then there's Donald Trump got impeached twice during his first term by a Democratic-run Congress led by Nancy Pelosi. They impeached him twice. All impeachment means is to bring a charge against a person. So they're bringing a charge against Donald Trump that you did some bad thing. They did it 2 times, and both times they failed to get him convicted because the impeachment is just similar to an indictment when you go to court. You get indicted, that means the court is telling you officially have been charged or you're going to reign. Here's the official charge against you. But you still get to go to court and they still have to convict you of the thing. And Donald Trump beat both of his impeachments. So he got found not guilty of both impeachments because you need a certain amount to impeach him. And then that could possibly lead to his removal. Didn't work. And Nancy Pelosi and crew knew it wasn't going to work, but they did it anyway because it's all for show. And Donald Trump, if the Democrats are able to take control of Congress in the midterm elections of 2026, I guarantee you he will be impeached at least for the 3rd time, maybe a time after that. They may try to do it twice in the last 2 years. He's going to get impeached again if the Democrats can get enough votes in the Congress. But the worst they could do is something like that, is that they can possibly bring up impeachment in an extreme case. They can't do it right now. And I think by the time the Democrats, if they were to get control in the midterm elections, actually, they might still try to impeach him because of this. They might just decide to dig up some old dirt and use this against him to impeach him. I guarantee you, if they can control their impeachment, they will find a reason. As they say, show me the man and I will show you the crime. They will find a crime with Donald Trump to impeach him. Right now, they're not going to impeach him because Congress right now is controlled by the Republicans, and they're not going to have enough people who would support that in order for them to do it. Now, Congress could see what Donald Trump is doing right now. If he continues to do it, I think this is going to blow over within the next 48 hours. That's my prediction. But if he continues to do this, if that were to happen, Congress could view this as, hey, the president is violating his oath of office and he is abusing power. Now, before this even happened, how many times have you heard people say Donald Trump is violating his oath and abusing power? Understand, they say this about every single thing he does. People don't like anything that Donald Trump does. They say this. Oh, he's abusing his oath of office. He is abusing his power. He is violating his oath. He is destroying the Constitution. He is threatening democracy. They've been saying this about Donald Trump for the last 10 years. So all this is just the new flavor of excuse to be mad at Donald Trump. This is all they do. And again, it creates a lot of political theater. Good news is it creates a lot of source material for people like myself who are talking about current events. The media, now the political pressure that Donald Trump could face could be from things like the media, because everybody's talking about it. General public opinion, like Bernie Sanders and his campaign tour. I don't know what he's campaigning for, but Bernie Sanders, his campaign tour, I guess he's gearing up for 2028, maybe. Bernie, I think Bernie's going to win 2028, the Democratic ticket. That'd be interesting. And political allies or opponents can turn on the president. So everybody can just turn on the president and tell him that he's wrong and go march to the White House and demonstrate against him. And the problem with that, even though they can do this to create a certain amount of public pressure, the problem with that is Trump seems to be pretty immune to that stuff. What do y'all think? That stuff works against a normal politician. It does not work on Donald Trump. They've been doing it, again, for 10 years. So when he first won in 2016, I remember some people who I know personally were out marching in the streets, protesting Donald Trump. What were they protesting? They're just protesting. They were just mad that he won. This is after he won. They're protesting that he won the election. What are you doing? What are you protesting? You should have protested about voting against him. And if you did vote against him, then okay, you didn't win. Majority rules. What are you protesting? So people to go and protest Donald Trump right now, again, what are you achieving? There have been some protests against him. I saw in some big cities, people were protesting in New York. I think I saw one in Chicago. And you could pretty much consider this Bernie Sanders tour, again, whatever he's calling this, you can consider this a protest. He posts, I see posts up of the people, the paid influencers on the political left saying things like, oh my God, there's something happening. There's a big movement occurring. Look at all these people who showed up for Bernie Sanders. This is the biggest crowd in Bernie Sanders history. And all the time he's been in politics, there's a movement. There's something changing. And I say the same thing to all those people. Like, mofo, did you just copy and paste one of your posts from the summer of 2024 and you say the same thing about Kamala Harris? Something is happening. Oh my God, it's a big movement. We've never seen crowds like this. It's going to be amazing. Something is occurring. Can y'all feel the energy shift? Everybody was saying that in August, September, and October of last year. How'd that turn out? So now all of a sudden, Bernie Sanders, he's the one now. Now he's got all the movement. Hopefully Bernie Sanders makes it to 2028. And if he does, is he the candidate? So this is just silly to me. So all this political opinion or public opinion, going against Donald Trump, what is that actually going to do? Again, this is open defiance that could possibly damage the credibility of the president. I don't think that's really a thing. It can invite backlash against the president. Again, he already got plenty of backlash, both domestically and internationally. Again, what is any of that going to do? This is a normal president. This is any president we've seen in the last 25 years. This would all be very effective because they all operate by the normal political playbook. Donald Trump doesn't operate by the normal political playbook. So all these things that they could do don't mean anything because they're already doing it. So there is no enforcement squad for the Supreme Court. That's the bottom line. Congress could possibly do something, but not really. And the threat of chaos, I don't see that happening. Chaos from who? Everyday citizens? I doubt it. Or the people who are really capable of the most chaos, I think, are people who support him, not the people who go against him. That's just generally what I think. But all that being said, when it comes to now, all that said, when it comes to the Trump case, I think that's all I need to say about that. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about a different subject. I usually talk about one subject on these lives, but today we're going to talk about two. Here's the other one that I think is going to be a meatier discussion. And I'm going to take questions and comments at the end, by the way. So if you're listening, after I get through this subject, we're going to open it up for questions and comments. So if you have a question or comment on the Trump situation, just hold it until I get done. And you have a question or comment on the one that I'm about to talk about, this Texas case, then of course you can share that as well. So I think most of you know what happened in Texas about 2 weeks ago. There was a track and field event, and some white kids were sitting under, or let's just say one white kid, specifically him and his brother, were sitting under a tent that was for their school. And some black kid who didn't go to their school and allegedly shouldn't have been under that tent, he goes and takes the seat under the tent that he wasn't supposed to be under at this big stadium because I guess it's hot outside, so he sit under tents. The white kid goes up to the black kid and tells him he's not supposed to be sitting there. They exchange words. And long story short, the white kid allegedly grabbed either the black kid's body or he grabbed his bag, something like that. Something happened. We don't know. We haven't seen the video yet. There's a whole lot of stories about what happened, what didn't. We will find out very soon. And the black kid pulls a knife out of his backpack and he stabs the white kid one time. The white kid bleeds out and dies on the spot. Now, all y'all know about this story, right? Okay, so this happened. Bring me the pump. Bring me the pump and I'll blow it up. So my son's asking me to blow up this balloon. I will, but I'm gonna keep talking to you all while I'm doing it. So he stabs the white kid. The white kid dies on the spot. All right. Most of you know about this story. So the white kid got charged. The black kid got charged with murder in the state of Texas, and he was immediately incarcerated, basically held until his trial. The trial date has not been set yet. And it was set that he had $1 million bond. His bond was $1 million. And to get out, he would have to post 10%. 10% is $100,000. They put up a, what do they call those, crowdfunding campaign, GoFundMe, Give, Send, Go, one of those, to get money for this kid. A bunch of money was raised. There was a lot of controversy about that. Why are people giving money to this kid because he stabbed somebody, killed somebody, etc.? Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that because in the United States, the law of the land is you are innocent until proven guilty, even if there was video evidence of you doing the thing, even if you admitted to doing the thing, like this kid did allegedly. This is the wrong pump. Get the other pump. Get the bigger one. Where's the bigger one? Yeah, the big one? Okay, I'll do it with this one. Okay. So innocent until proven guilty is the law of the land, ladies and gentlemen. So even if those of you who are listening to this, you don't like the fact that this black kid stabbed the white kid and that the white kid is now dead. He was pronounced dead on the spot. And you don't like the fact that some black people are maybe somewhat excited. This pump doesn't work. I need the other pump. Can you go get the other pump?
I can't.
You can't? Why not?
Because you need this one to roll.
This one doesn't work for this balloon. I need the other pump. Can you go get the other pump?
No.
Why not?
Because I need this one.
Okay, you can have that one, but if you want me to blow up this balloon, I need the other pump. Can you go get it? Go find out if you can get it and bring it back. Okay.
Make sure.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So even if you happen to be, on one side or other of this conversation, because maybe you're white and you don't like the fact that this was black on white violence, or you're on the other side of the conversation, the law of the land is innocent until proven guilty. Even if it was on video of him, and I believe it's probably on video of this black kid stabbing a white kid, and he admitted when the cops accosted him, he said, I did it. But just because you did it does not mean you are legally guilty. The whole reason that we have a court case is so that the court can decide, are you legally guilty or are you legally innocent? That's the purpose of having court. That's the reason why everyone gets their day in court, even if you are on video doing the thing. The question is not, did you do it or not at that point? The question is, why did you do it? And is this legally justifiable or is it legally not justifiable? And we have plenty of examples of this. For example, one of the cross references is Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. All right. We know that he did the thing. We know he shot a couple people and they died. The question is not whether he did it or not. The question is what he did legally justifiable? So this black kid is pretty much accepted that he stabbed the kid and the kid died. We know that. But that does not necessarily mean that he is a criminal because we don't know yet. That's why he gets his day in court. So all that being said, this kid gets his bail lowered. The judge is this black woman. And again, I told you I was going to bring that back up. Many people seem to be upset that a black judge has, I guess, given this guy some type of leniency. This kid, he's only 17 years of age, some type of leniency by lowering his bail from $1 million to $250,000 so he can post and he can get out. And right now, for those who don't know, he is out of jail, but he is on house arrest and he has an ankle monitor on. So he can't really go anywhere. He's just in his house. And it seemed like I got on social media last night and I saw this in the evening and I responded to a few posts of people. Most of them appeared to be white people who appeared to be, and you never know on social media, people pretend things, appeared to be outraged about the fact that this black kid was allowed to bail out on a lower amount of bail. Listen, he would have bailed out either way, but I'll get to that in a moment. But this kid was able to bail out on a lower amount of bail, even though he stabbed and killed a white kid over some confrontation. Now, I've already talked about this 2 times. I've done 2 live streams where I've talked about this exact subject already. And when I started responding to that, being that I'm black and you can see my name, my picture in the image, can you all guess what kind of responses I was getting from these people? I was getting a lot of responses from people who, again, we don't know, allegedly white folks who are allegedly mad over the racial dynamics of the situation, telling me that all I'm doing is just supporting him because he's black. And I said back to a lot of them, please check my receipts. All right, please check my receipts of what I've said about race hustlers. Please check my receipts, what I said about George Floyd. Check my receipts of what I said about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. Check my receipts of what I said about this very case. And most people aren't going to do that. They're just going to react in a moment to what they are seeing and what they've heard, which I understand. I mean, that's what social media is for. That's what social media is about. However, all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, as I already said, everyone gets their day in court. Now, even if you are on video, quote unquote, red-handed doing the thing, you still get to go to court and you still get to make a case for yourself, whether you are admitting that you did it and you're asking for no mercy from the court, whether you are claiming that there is a justified reason why you did it, therefore you may get off, i.e. George Zimmerman, i.e. Kyle Rittenhouse, and there Daniel Penny. There are many examples of this, but they are not direct parallels simply because they happen in different states. There are different mitigating factors in every single case, and every case must be argued on the merits of that case and the details and the accepted facts of that case by the defense team, by the prosecution, which is different in each place. It is moderated by the judge, what is allowed to be permissible in court versus what is not, and it is decided by the jury. And every jury is unique. Every judge is unique. Every prosecution is unique. Every defense lawyer is unique. And the circumstances are unique, even if they're the exact same people. So all of this must be factored in. And this is the reason why, as I told you all when I first talked about this, and the second time I talked about it, and I'll tell you the third time that I'm talking about it, is that court cases are not adjudicated on social media. We will talk about it on social media, but the outcome is not determined on social media. So please, any of you, regardless of how you feel about the situation, do not get too emotionally worked up over these proceedings because, again, everything has to go to trial. We need to see the video. When the video comes out, guarantee I'm going to do another live stream when we see the video. And it is rumored that police do have the video. The reason we haven't seen it yet is because they confiscated everybody's phone who was there. So allegedly there is footage. We're waiting for that footage to come out. Guaranteed there'll be a live stream when we get that. And we got to look at the video. We still have to go to court. And when I say we, I mean us as spectators. They got to go to court and there has to be a trial date set. And then they got to argue it in court. Anybody who said they know what happened or saw what happened, you got to stand on it. You got to take the stand, put your right hand on the Bible, and you got to swear under oath that you're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then let's see what you say then. Don't tell me what you said on Facebook. Don't tell me what somebody told you. Tell me what you're going to say on the stand when you're under oath and there's a penalty for not telling the truth. That's what I want to hear. And then it depends on what evidence is allowed in court. Then it depends on what the jury decides. Ultimately, that's all it comes down to. The jury is going to decide guilty or not guilty based on whatever charges we end up with, based on what the prosecution decides to bring against this kid. That is the situation. Now, what people are mad about is why is this kid who murdered someone, as some people like to say, he murdered this person in cold blood, why is he allowed to bail out in this situation? I want to let all of you know that there is plenty of legal precedent for this happening. This is called pretrial release. For those of you who are not familiar with the term, or you heard it before, you didn't know what it meant, that's what this is. Pretrial release means you got arrested for some suspected criminal activity. Again, the job of the police, by the way, for those of you who don't understand this, the job of is 3 levels when it comes to the criminal justice system. The police, and let me back up. The legislature creates laws. That's Congress. They create laws. And on the state level, there's a state legislature. They create the laws for the state that you live in. So they create the law. That's step 1. Step 2 is the police. They roll around. Their job is to enforce the law as they see it. So a police officer Any of you know of or ever been in a situation where a police officer suspected you of committing a crime? Maybe they wrote you a ticket or a violation, let's say. They wrote you a ticket or you got arrested, but it ended up the police officer was wrong. Legally, they were wrong to have done that. Doesn't mean they did something wrong, but just their judgment was ruled inaccurate. So even though you got the ticket, you end up getting the ticket thrown out because you fought it in court, and now the ticket is gone. Or you got arrested because the cop suspected that you did something, like let's say the cop thinks you assaulted somebody, or they are judging that you assaulted somebody based on the situation that they can read in the moment. You get arrested, then you get to go to court, and maybe the case gets thrown out, and you never have an assault on your record. You don't have a felony or a misdemeanor on your record because you got to fight it in court. So the job of the police is to simply enforce the law as they see it. And again, that doesn't mean that every police officer is right when they decide to arrest you or incarcerate you or detain you for whatever they think. Their job is just to enforce it as they see it. And then you go to court, and the court's job is to interpret the law. And that's the 3 steps. So legislature in the state of Texas created laws around taking somebody else's life. Because the police suspect that this kid may have violated the law, he gets arrested. He goes to jail. And now he's going to go to court when he has his trial. And that's when the court is going to interpret, did this guy's actions violate the law or did it not? That is the way it works. That applies to everybody. And I see a Jersey girl over there on Instagram. It is called due process. Everyone is entitled to due process. Even if you really think the outcome of that due process should be guilty, even if you really think the outcome of that due process should be not guilty, everyone is entitled to due process, regardless of how you feel. Even if you're the person, right? Even if someone in your family is the victim of what that person did, they are entitled to due process the same way you would be entitled to due process if you were on the other side of the courtroom. This is the way it works for everyone. Again, this is called pretrial release. Even in a murder case, which this is, this is legally allowed under, first of all, the U.S. Constitution. And also it is allowed under Texas law if the judge determines. There are 3 things specifically in the state of Texas. Number 1, this is when the judge can allow for a pretrial release. In other words, they set a bail. Because if they set a bail, that means if you come up with the money, you can get out. Now, if you don't come up with the money, you still got to stay in jail. But if you come up with the money, you can get out. So you can be denied bail. So a judge can just say, well, I'm not setting a bail. You got to stay in jail. That's one thing they can do. That happened to a couple people. I believe it happened to Mr. Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. Anybody confirm that? I believe that happened to him when he got arrested for the suspected crime of murder. He did actually commit murder, but was it a crime is the question. When he got arrested, I believe he had to stay in jail. He had to stay in jail for a while. He might have bailed out, but I don't remember. Somebody can let me know if that happened or did. The point is, in the state of Texas, here's the 3 criteria for getting the pretrial release. Number 1, the judge does not believe you are a flight risk. They don't believe that you're just going to run away and hide and move to Bermuda and they can never extradite you because they can't get you. If they believe you're a flight risk, you're not going to be let out of jail. So they'll just hold you. So they believe this kid is not a flight risk. Number 2, does not pose a danger to the community. So someone who's like a career criminal and they just seem to be doing bad stuff to people all the time, they may be deemed a threat to the community. So they're not going to get let out of jail. They got to stay in jail. And number 3, you have some strong ties to the community, such as you have gone to school around there, you have family around there, you have solid people around you. And because of those solid ties to the community, you are not like some person who's just going around menacing people where you live. If you meet those 3 criteria, again, this is all based on the judge's personal judgment. That's the reason why they call the judge. They get to make the judgment call. The judge can say, okay, I will give you an opportunity to get pretrial release. What all of you need to understand, and a lot of people are not connecting the dots here, is that Karmelo Anthony, that's his name, the black kid, not Karmelo, the basketball player, but Karmelo, that's his name, Karmelo with a K. He already had $1 million bail set before. All that happened yesterday, I believe this happened yesterday, is the judge just lowered the bail to $250K. It was already at $1 million. In other words, he was already granted pretrial release if he could have come up with the money. If he could have come up with the money on $1 million bond, he could have got out a week ago, but he didn't have the money yet. All she did was lower the number. She didn't change the ruling from no release to yes release. All she changed was the number. So instead of having to come up with this much, now you only got to come up with this much. That's all she did. She didn't actually change the rule at all. All she did was lower the number because his lawyers, Carmelo Anthony's lawyers, argued that, hey, this bail is a little bit excessive. This kid doesn't have any violent priors. He got into an isolated situation with this other kid. Why he was carrying around a knife, we don't know. We don't know yet, and we're not going to make any judgments on that until we hear what gets said in court. But this kid doesn't have any violent priors. He's only 17 years old. He was a football player too. He comes from what looks like a 2-parent household, and it's not like he's some ghetto person going around just beating people up and causing crime every day. This is the first time he's been through the system. This is a strong enough case, Your Honor, for us to at least lower the bond so this kid can at least be at home. We'll put an ankle monitor on him. He's not going to do anything bad between now and his trial. That is a completely legitimate argument. Regardless of how you feel about what happened, again, regardless of how you feel about what happened, that's a completely legitimate argument. What's wrong with that? What problem does anybody have with this? It's your first time through the system. Yes, it's a murder, but it's your first time through the system. You don't have any priors on your record of doing any type of violent criminal activity. And I know lawyers, and they talk about this all the time. They say, look, if you don't have priors of violent criminal activity, and this is your first time having some type of criminal charge, whether it's a felony, whether it's a misdemeanor, whether it's something like this, like murder, there's a good chance if you have a solid enough lawyer that you can at least get some leniency between now and your trial. If you don't have any reason for the court to believe you're going to go out and do something crazy between now and your trial, if you never did anything crazy before. Again, what's the number one indicator of future performance is past performance. And this kid's past performance for the last 17 years, I'm not talking about the 5 minutes it took him to stab the white kid, but the last 17 years of his life has proven that this guy's not really violent. He's not really out there, again, hurting people on a legal level. Now, maybe he got in a fight in school, but that doesn't make you a violent criminal. Like, come on. Let's not do that. And I'm talking to everybody here. Let's not do that. And just because he happens to be black, and maybe you are on the other side of the argument in the situation, we can't do that. Because had this been a white kid, and people were asking me this on social media, here's my answer right here. What if it had been a white kid who stabbed a black kid and he got the exact same thing? I'll be saying the exact same thing I'm saying now. Again, check my receipts. This is not race-based for me. I have no dog in the race when it comes to race in this situation. I don't care if it's a white kid stabbing a black kid stabbing a white kid, or black people stabbing each other, or white people stabbing each other. We wouldn't be talking about it if it was that. But because of the racial dynamics of the situation, that's the reason why it's a story. But everyone is entitled to due process. And there's no reason for this kid to be held in jail at 17 years old on this murder charge when there is some reasonable reason to believe that he may have felt like he was defending himself. I'm not saying that that's the outcome. I'm not saying that that's what they're going to argue in court. We don't know. It seems as if you could reasonably argue. Again, this is the reasonable person. I forget the term they use for it, but it's a reasonable person. What's the word? I'm missing the word. The word is escaping me here. But in court, this is literally a thing, is that you would argue as a lawyer, whether on the prosecution or defense, what would a reasonable person do in this situation? Is it reasonable for someone to use a knife to defend themselves if they feel like they are in some form of physical danger? Is that reasonable? The answer is yes, if they have the knife. Now, could that knife be excessive? Yes, it could. Why are you even carrying a knife in the first place at school? That's another question that needs to be answered. And did you have any reason to believe that this person could really harm you in such a way that you need to use a knife to get out of the situation? That's another question that needs to be answered. We don't know these answers yet. They will be asked in court and they will be answered in court. I'm not here to answer those questions. But is it reasonable to say that this person might, this is what the judge has to decide. Is it reasonable to say that this defendant might claim self-defense when they go to trial? Is it reasonable to assume that? Even all of you who don't like the fact that this kid may try to claim self-defense, you don't like the people on the internet are saying, well, self-defense is self-defense. I personally, if you just ask me personally, do I believe that he's going to be able to get off on a self-defense? That would depend on the technicalities of the law. I would say that if he goes to court and tries to enter it's not really a plea, but if they try to build their case around he was just defending himself, it's just self-defense because the white kid started it. I said this back then. I said it a week ago. I'm going to say it again today. I will say it again in the future. That's an uphill battle he has to climb. That's a very steep uphill climb he's going to have to make. Now, any of you ever been to San Francisco? You've seen the hills in San Francisco? Down here in South Florida, there are no hills. There's no mountains here. But in San Francisco, there's a very steep streets. All right, that's a very steep street. What's the name of that? Any of you live in San Francisco or been there? What's the name of that street that's really, really steep and it curves all around and people like drive through it as like a tourist attraction to drive through the street. There's like very, very steep. It's a very steep incline or decline. And you drive down it and it's like you got to drive super slow because it's very steep. Anybody know the name of that street in San Francisco? It's in the downtown area. Last time I was there, I was walking around the downtown area. It was like near the baseball stadium, and then they have the place where all the fish are at. What do they call that? I mean the boats, all that stuff. Whatever the name of that street is. One of you may know what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's the kind of climb he got, and he has to go up, not down. All right, it's called Lombard. That's the name of it. Okay, so that's what y'all are saying. Okay, Big Man and James Collins. I think that's the name of the street. Fisherman's Wharf, yeah, that's the place where the fish are. But I'm talking about the street, that very, very steep street that curves around and around and around, and you got to drive down it. I didn't even try to drive down that street because I'm not driving down it because I was in a rental car. I said, if I scrape up this rental car, they're going to hit my insurance for that. So anyway, that's a very steep uphill climb that this kid and his defense team are going to have if they're claiming self-defense. That's a very steep climb they got to climb. But do I believe they're going to try it? Probably. I think they're going to try it. Do I think it's reasonable to try that? If I'm his defense attorney, let's say he comes to me and he tells me the story. Hey, I was at school or I was at this event and this white kid came up to me and he told me I had to move and I didn't want to move. And he grabbed me and I pulled out my knife and stabbed him. And I definitely stabbed him. And a bunch of people got it on camera. Or what can I do, Mr. Dre, my attorney? What can I do to try to defend myself in court? I say, all right, well, given the information that you give me, we probably gonna have to try self-defense. All right, what else you gonna try? You ain't really got any other options. It's either self-defense or I'm asking the court for mercy. Those are only two options you got. Asking the court for mercy is like, I admit that I did it. I admit that I was wrong. I'm just hoping that the court is a little bit nice to me. Instead of giving me 20 years, maybe give me 10. All right, that's the only other thing he can do. It's pretty much the only two options they got. And it sounds like they're going to play the self-defense thing, but we don't know. So is it reasonable to assume this? Yes, it is. Is anything crazy about that? I say no. I don't think that's crazy. So based on these things, there's nothing wrong with the judge granting him a lowered bond so he can get out. He would have got out anyway. They would have just came up with more money. And that's it. Now, why the bond gets lowered, as I already explained, defense attorneys argue for this. So that's how it works. That's the reason why you got to have a good lawyer, because a good lawyer will keep you out of jail, at least between now and your trial. They will argue that the original bond might be a little bit too much or is unconstitutional. And the Eighth Amendment says you cannot have excessive bail. So the defense lawyer for Karmelo, probably said this bail is a little bit too high given the circumstances. That is a good argument. Again, even if you don't like what this kid did, and even if you think he should go to jail and be buried under the jail, even if you think that is a good legal argument. This bail is a little bit too high given the circumstances. That is a fine argument. If I was his lawyer, I would argue the same thing. And if you were his lawyer, you should argue the same thing. One thing that many of you need to understand, if you're going to be a lawyer, I'm not even a lawyer, but I understand this because it's just the way that I think. I try to think as logically and as objectively as humanly possible, that when you're a lawyer, your job is not to judge whether your client is guilty or not guilty. Your job is to argue the case as best you can, even if you think this person is as guilty as sin. Your job is to argue and do your job as an attorney. That's the reason why you get paid. That's the reason why most people shouldn't be lawyers, because you got to put sometimes you may have to. I've heard lawyers talk about this, but I believe, just from the outside looking in, sometimes you got to put your conscience aside and just do your job. Because your job as a lawyer is not to morally judge your clients. Your job as a lawyer is to do the best job you possibly can for the type of lawyer that you are. So I know I know a lawyer who's like a workers' compensation lawyer. And all he does is anytime somebody gets injured on their job, he argues on their behalf to bring a lawsuit against the company that they were working for to try to get them some money. Now, what if someone comes in your office as a workers' comp lawyer and you think they are sort of exacerbating the situation just so they can collect some money from the company that they work for, their insurance? What if you think that's the case? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. Why? Because your job as a lawyer is to help your clients. If you decide to take on the case, then your job is to argue that case as best as you possibly can. Even if you think this person is kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, that is literally your job as a lawyer. That's what you're supposed to do. If you are a district attorney and someone gets charged and there's a charge of murder against a kid, and that's what the court decides to file, you got to go argue that case. Even if you think it might be a little bit extra, you can argue in the background, hey, maybe we should lower this. But if that's what everybody decides to go with, you got to go do your job. Why? Because it's your job. If you're a defense attorney and O.J. Simpson walks into your office and tells you, hey, I did it, but hey, Johnny Cochran, I need you to defend me and get me off on not guilty that I didn't do it. Even though I'm telling you, Johnny, I did it under lawyer-client privilege, I need you to argue as if I didn't do it and try to help me beat this case. And Johnny says, okay, well, I'm a defense attorney. You got the money? Yes. Okay, I'm going to go get you off. And you see what happens. That's the job of a lawyer. The job of a lawyer is not judging. The judge's job is to judge. The lawyer's job is to argue. whatever side you happen to be on. If you're a criminal defense attorney, you're going to be defending some people who clearly did some criminal shit, maybe at least by your personal estimation. But your job is not to judge them, because again, that's not what you're there for. That's not what they pay you for. They pay you to help them mitigate the legal outcome as best you possibly can. And the better you do that, the more money you make as a lawyer. All right, that's the job. If you want to judge people, become a judge. If you want to argue on someone's behalf, you become a lawyer. So which one do you want to do? And again, I'm saying all that to say that this attorney for Mr. Anthony did exactly what he's supposed to do. Any lawyer with who's passed the bar and ain't got to have a record doing anything in the legal world would agree that this is the smart thing to do. What else are you going to do? So this kid has, first of all, so we talked about the argument of no excessive bail. Secondly, if the kid has no prior criminal record, which he doesn't, if he is underage, which he is, and the facts of the case are somewhat, they can be deemed as murky. What does that mean? Murky means that this person may be able to claim self-defense. If we are unclear on their intent as to why they did what they did, both of which we don't know yet, then it is fair to lower the bail. Again, there's nothing crazy about this. So the judge may reduce the bond and allow as what happened here, which is home confinement with monitoring. That's what the kid has. So he's confined to his house. He can't leave his house. He has an ankle monitor on. He's got two parents at home. He seems to come from a stable enough family. I haven't heard anything from his family, but he seems to come from a two-parent household. This kid doesn't seem like he's a risk to society going back to his house with his two parents. And he got a damn murder charge hanging over his head. I don't think he's going to do anything crazy between now and the court date, which I would guess is going to be before the end of this year. And I think it's actually going to be pretty quick. I think that trial might start before the end of the summer. And he has juvenile status. That's the third thing. This kid's only 17 years old. Even if he's being charged as an adult, he is technically still a juvenile. And that can influence how strictly the judge handles pretrial conditions. And the fact that he has two parents probably played a role. The fact that he comes from what seems to be a stable household probably played a role. The fact that he played sports in school and he was on some football team, whatever, and seems to have good grades according to what we've heard, that probably plays a role. All of these things play a role in the situation. So some people may say, well, this is too lenient. Maybe they should have just kept him in jail. Okay. Let's see. If the facts are that someone just committed a cold-blooded killing, I mean, there was no threat to them. They bought a weapon with intent of doing something to somebody with the weapon. That might be a little bit lenient to let this person have bail. If you believe, those of you listening to me right now, if you believe Mr. Anthony showed up to that event, that track and field event, with the knife in his bag because he was looking for a reason to stab someone to death, then I can understand you having a problem with the bail being lowered. Based on just my personal hunches, I don't think that's why he showed up to the event. I don't think he showed up to the event looking for a problem through which he could use his knife. I don't think that's why he showed up. Now, we still have to answer the question, why the hell are you carrying around a knife? That is a legitimate question that must be answered, and he's going to have to answer that in court. And his lawyer is going to have to figure that one out. And the reason why I told you this is going to be an uphill climb for them claiming self-defense. You're walking around with a knife and then you go use it at a high school event. What are you doing? Like, are you in a war zone? What are you doing walking around with a knife that you could use to kill somebody? So he has to answer that question. But do I think he showed up there looking for an opportunity to use it? I don't think so. You may disagree, but I don't think that he did. So if it was a cold-blooded killing, then yes, maybe you keep that person incarcerated. But if there was a physical altercation, which it appears, no matter what side of this conversation you're on, it appears that we generally agree that there was a physical altercation. And physical altercation doesn't mean a fist fight. Physical altercation simply mean you put your hands on me and I didn't want you to put your hands on me. And it sounds like that's what happened because the kid said to the black kid said to the white kid, make me move. And then he said, if you touch me, you see what happens, or push me or whatever he said, see what happens. So in other words, and the white kid did it. And that's when the stabbing happened. So there was some type of physical altercation that occurred, definitely a verbal altercation. There's going to be a claim of self-defense. Again, don't know if they're going to win, but they're going to try. And it was a heat of the moment situation. I think all of those things, again, are possible arguments. What they're going to argue in court, we don't know yet. But are these all possible arguments? The answer is yes. And if you can detach yourself emotionally from the situation and just look at it objectively, there's no argument against any of this. That there was a physical altercation of some form. And a physical altercation doesn't always necessarily even mean a physical touch. Physical altercation can be a threat of a touch. Some claim of self-defense and a heat of the moment situation, which it seems like this was. House arrest pretrial is legally reasonable, especially for a minor, and a judge would rule that. The fact that this judge happens to be black is immaterial to this outcome. Even a white guy would have done the same thing. I don't see a white judge saying, no, you got to stay in jail for the next 4 months until we go to trial. I don't think that would have happened no matter what the race of the judge. But everybody's making a story out of this simply because the judge happens to be black. This kid happens to be black. There's a bunch of black people defending this kid, claiming self-defense as if it's an open and shut case. They are wrong. It's not an open and shut case. As if it was, he would already be free and innocent already. He has to go to court because it's not an open and shut case. And there's a lot of people on the other side, white folks, who are mad that a black person killed a white person, and there's a bunch of black people who seem to be defending that. And some of you, I can understand your annoyance at that situation. I get annoyed when people do the race hustling thing on either side of the conversation. Most of the time when I point out race hustlers, I'm talking about black people who take situations that have nothing to do with race and they make it about race just to draw attention to themselves and get other very gullible black people to buy into their emotional nonsense. I am not a fan of the race hustler. I call them out on social media, on the internet, damn near every day. And a lot of people get mad at me for doing so. At the same time, with me saying that, most race hustlers are black people. White people, do not fall into this trap. Don't do it. Don't fall into the trap of, now that it's a black versus white thing and the black person is the one on trial, that now any view that you have of the situation now makes you start challenging black people, or just making it, well, let me just have this opinion because the white person is the victim and the black person is the one who did it. Well, it depends on the situation. It depends on the situation. Sometimes the white person is in the wrong. Sometimes the black person is in the wrong. It's a case by case basis. It's not a black or white thing. And when I say black or white, I don't mean racial black and white. Black and white being a binary, that just because there's a conflict between the black person and the white person means the black person has to be wrong and the white person has to be right, nor vice versa. It depends on the details of the case, which must be adjudicated in court, because we need to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Right now, we have a very small piece of the information. Of all the information that's going to come out in this case, right now, we got about 2%. I want to remind all of you. Of all the information that's going to come out in this case, Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf, that's the white kid who got stabbed to death, we got about 2% of the information, but we've done about 98% of the talking already on this case. Because when it goes to trial, the details of that case are going to be so much tedium in the details of this case that most people are not going to be able to follow it enough to talk about it. I'll help you out because I'm going to follow it. I'm going to know what's going on, and I will talk about it. But we've done about 98% of the talking. Actually, no, let me not say 98%. We've done 49% of the talking. The other 49, you know when that's going to come? When that video comes up. So the first 49% of the talking is all just conjecture, us just talking about what we think we know that we don't actually know. We only know a little tiny bit. When that video comes out, we're going to get the other 49%. That's going to take us to 98. And the other 2% is going to be what actually happens in trial of conversation. I should say 48%. We're going to get 50% from the video. When the video comes out, that's going to be a story for a week. I'm looking forward to that because I'm going to use that for content. So there is legal precedent for all of this stuff, everything that I'm saying here. All that being said, folks, I think we're pretty tidy on time here. So let's get into the conversation. Let's get into the comments. I do need to take a bathroom break here because I think there's going to be a lot of comments for me to engage with here today. So all of you, I'm trying to figure out something I can do or play or something like that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play one of the episodes of my masterclass called the Work on Your Game Masterclass, How to Protect Your Body as You Age. I'm going to let this play for literally like 90 seconds. I'm going to run to the restroom. Then we're going to open the floor up for conversation. Moderators, get ready to pin some useful comments because I doubt I'm going to be able to read every single comment that comes through here today. That's just my anticipation. So I'm going to play this out loud and I'll be right back in 90 seconds. All right, there's a reason for this. When you are physically overweight, your organs and your heart have to work harder to move you around, to pump blood through your system, and to keep you standing upright. They have to just work harder because you're giving it more weight to carry around. That means your body's going to tire out and expire sooner than if it had to do less work and work less hard just to keep you operating on a normal plane as a human. So help your body out in this regard by getting into a healthy body mass weight range for your age and for your height. You can probably go on Google and get a good answer for this. All it's going to ask you is your age, your height, and usually it's just your age and your height and your weight. And it'll tell you what's healthy versus what's not healthy. You may not even need to go to a doctor for this, but if you have a doctor, then ask the doctor. You have a gym membership, ask one of the personal trainers to help you figure this out. Now, if you're not sure what that range is, again, go to your doctor to help you out. There is a range for everybody. If you are above the range, meaning you are maybe even clinically obese, or you're in a bit of the danger zone when it comes to these things, then you should consider this an emergency and make your adjustments immediately. Your body cannot keep doing extra work forever, okay? And it will expire sooner than it needs to expire if you continue to force your body to do more than it's supposed to be doing. All right, so this becomes an emergency situation. Also, pay attention to what you are putting in your body. Your body cannot and will not bounce back from alcohol, junk food, and bad eating decisions as easily at age 50. All right, so that's a little quick preview of the Work on Your Game Masterclass. That show comes out every single day. Apple, Spotify. Those of you who use either of those apps, if you don't, you should start using it. That show comes out every single day. It's about 20, 30 minutes per episode. And it's called Work on Your Game. So let's see what we got. Tay Diggs over on YouTube. Good morning to you, sir. Facebook, I don't see anything. LinkedIn, I don't see. Let's see what we got going on Instagram. Then we're going to come over to TikTok. Jersey Girl Baby, good morning to you. Said nothing get passed unless Congress passes it. Well, and the president signs it. You need that too. Jersey said you're the best and patient dad. Love it. Thank you. Jersey says due process, period. That is correct. Due process. Jersey said it wasn't excessive bail. Well, that's why they changed it. That's the reason why we got lawyers. The gunman got to eat Burger King after killing brown people in the church. Do I need to go on about pink people killing brown? No, let's not make it about race. This is not it is about race, but it's not. Jersey said all pink people school shooting stems from bullying. So what is the difference? The race of the person? I don't know about all that. I don't know about that. Jersey said he has an army behind him, period. We plan on standing with him. Fair enough. That's what you want to do. Jersey Girl said over on Instagram, kids been posting these twins as was bullies at their school, and I can believe it. Well, let's not get into that. You don't know. Let's not draw conclusions of things that we don't know to be true. So, Jersey Girl, I agree with a couple of things you said. A couple of other things you said, you went a little bit overboard with that. We don't know it to be true. We cannot make assertions. That's where this conversation starts to go left. And I don't mean just with you, but with everybody. Is when people start to, well, they say, well, this person's black and this person's white, so I'm going to stand with the black person because they're black. I'm going to stand with the white person because they're white. Let's not do that. All right, that's when we start going in the wrong direction, and we lose objectivity when we start doing that. That's the point. You can't be objective if you're saying, I'm just going to defend any black person if they're in a conflict with a white person, or I'm going to defend any white person in a conflict with a black person. We need to defend what is accurately true based on the laws on the books, regardless of skin color. But that's one of the reasons why I'm here to talk about this, is a lot of people don't have that ability. So let's see what we got. Good morning, Courtney. So I think I'm almost at the top of the comments. So let's see what we got going on here, folks. What y'all got for me? Moderators, you see anything good, just go ahead and pin it. I'm looking on TikTok right now. Good morning to you, Carla. Thank you for the engagement in the GOAT. The Supreme Court is just wrong on this issue. Yes, that's the reason why Trump is ignoring them. Trump is just deeming them wrong and doing what they're doing. So the Supreme Court said facilitate. They will allow him to come back. They will provide a plane. But, well, the guy in El Salvador said he's not letting him come. He's not sending them back. That's the issue. Erica said, don't forget to send your daily heart, me, and then claim the points. Yes, thank you, Erica, for letting people know that. Carlos said, we shouldn't have a SCOTUS justice who doesn't know what a woman is. Yeah, well, they voted for her. Thank Joe Biden for nominating her. Garrett said, controversy writes paychecks keep everyone fighting and the money stays flowing. That is correct. That's how the media works. HCX said, the SCOTUS said the district federal judge didn't have authority to effectuate him, only facilitate. Yeah, so there's a lot of details in terms of what judge said what and the back and forth and all the details legally. Linda said, you are correct. It will all work out. Yeah, I think this will blow over in like 2 days at the most. Courtney, thank you for the team bracelets. The ruling was not to effectuate. James Collins, what's going on? Good morning. Lucky Lancelot said, there's no legal mechanism for anyone to stop him at this point. Congress investigation is a joke. Yes, well, a lot of things Congress does is a joke. That I would agree with. King Kameko, thanks for the follow. Carl said, wasting more money with all these hearings and investigations. Well, that's what they do. I mean, you got a full-time job in Congress. You got to do something. What are you going to do? James Collins said, Corey Spartacus Booker. Is that what they call him now, Spartacus? Angelica said, the grass is not always greener. Very true. Scotty G, thanks for the follow. Carlos said, we need to make sure we get out the vote and vote out more Democrats. Well, we'll see. You got about a year and a half before you had an opportunity to do that. James said, he needs 67 guilty votes to convict and remove a sitting president. Yeah, that's why they don't get it. That's why they can't do it. Carlos said, I thought Bukele said no. Yes, he did. That's what I said. He did say no. He said he's not doing it. So I don't know what they are expecting to happen at this point. Cammy followed the live creator. Thank you, Cammy, for the follow. Kay said Democrats won't win again. Yeah, if they try to impeach him, they're not going to win, but it will draw a lot of attention again. So I think they're going to do it. If they get control, they will impeach him again. That's a guarantee. Queen Bee said their playbook never changes is embarrassing. Well, especially when it regards Trump, their playbook never changes. Is only with Trump. When Trump gets out, I think they'll calm down. Bindu said you're right about that. Thank you. Jonesy, thank you for sharing the live. Carlos said Bernie is too old. Sorry, not sorry. Well, according to Bernie, he just had 36,000 people show up in Denver to fight against oligarchy. According to Bernie, that's what he said. What do y'all think about that? Loving over 50 said, how do we get rid of Trump permanently? Well, they tried that twice in the summer of 2024. Did you see it? It didn't work. So right now, I think you just got to wait it out till 2028, assuming he doesn't get a third term. And I'm kind of joking with that. He ain't getting a third term. AJ said, I like how he is shaking up politics, though. Yeah, we only got, 3 years left and it's over. Ruth said, SK, the country, protests impeach their president. Any social change has been achieved through protests. It may be ignited through a protest. I don't know if it's achieved through protests. And it also depends on how many people were against that person versus how many were defending the president in the SK country. M said he acted in direct opposition of unanimous SCOTUS decision, which is unconstitutional. Allegedly, but it depends on the other mitigating factors of the situation. If you just put it that way, then yes, it seems cut and dry, but it ain't. That's the whole point. Man Band said, any advice you take out 8 cops on GTA? Lewis Stark Willis says, it was raining, not hot. You're wrong already. Oh, you talking about the Texas situation? So they had the tents. I don't know if the tents were because of the rain or they had tents all the time. Either way, it doesn't matter. The whole point is the kid was sitting under the tent. Whether it was raining or hot, what difference does it make? I said they had the tent maybe because it's hot in Texas, so it was protecting them from the sun, which may still be the case even on sunny days and in addition to rainy days. Marcy says, has nothing to do with race. Are you lamenting that or are you asserting it? Elena Chapman said, baby boy is cracking me up. Yeah, I think he's eating breakfast now, so he hasn't come back in. August Concert said Austin should have kept his hands to himself. That term is should have. I see a lot of people miswriting this, and August is not personal against you, but I see a lot of people saying should have by saying should of. It sounds like should have when you use the apostrophe, the contraction should have, but the term is actually should have, not should of, should have. Should have kept his hands to himself. Just a grammar lesson for everybody. I see on social media people making that mistake over and over again. That's not a typo either. That's people just not understanding grammar. Should he have kept his hands to himself? At a preschool level, I understand it. But listen, I've been in situations in life where I told someone something verbally and they didn't quite listen and I put my hands on them. Now, had they pulled out a knife and stabbed me, then, okay, do I have to take some responsibility for that? Yes, I do. But I think it's a case-by-case basis. So, yes, you could say they should have kept their hands to themselves, but there are many situations where someone does exactly that and they don't get stabbed. So, I don't know. Vickery said, why are you making this about race at all? Vickery, I'm making it about race? Are you serious? It became about race as soon as we found out who did what and who got it done to them. It became about race. I didn't make it about race. I'm talking about it because everyone else is talking about it. And the reason everybody's talking about it is because of the racists. If it was a black person stabbing a black person, we wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't care. You wouldn't care. Nobody be talking about it. GF, thanks for the follow. James said, be glad he's not wanting you to blow up an air mattress. Well, if he wanted me to, I would use the machine that is provided to blow up an air mattress. I had an air mattress before, and they give you a machine. Mercy said, right-leaning judge. Well, hopefully a judge doesn't make their decisions based on that. China said, I can only imagine. Yeah. 199 said, all you guys stick together. What guys? What group? What entity are you trying to group me into based on something you took out of context? AJ said, do we have the facts about what happened exactly? We will not have the facts until they go to trial. We got a handful of facts right now. And the video will give us some more facts. But until we go to trial, we won't know the facts that will matter the most is what gets argued in court under oath with actual lawyers, an actual judge, and an actual jury. Until we have that, we don't know anything. We don't know much of anything. Let's say that. Strategy Brand said, I need to release videos and key witness statements that can be self-defense if he was being choked. Maybe, Strategy Brand. They will release the video at some point. They're not going to be able to hold it forever. Key witness statements. We're not going to. We may get that before the case. We may not. I think if the judge and the court system is smart, they don't put any of that stuff out. They're going to have to put the video out at some point. They're going to have to do that. As far as everything else, they shouldn't put anything else out. They should keep all of that shit under wraps until they go to trial. That's what they should do. If they release things to the public, all it's going to do is just stir up the public to keep arguing about it. But what is that going to do? That's not going to do anything. What it actually is going to do, Strategy Brands, is taint the jury pool. And the last thing you want, if you're a judge running a case, is a tainted jury pool. And if you're a defense lawyer, you don't want a tainted jury pool. And if you're a prosecutor, you don't want a tainted jury pool. So the more information they put out, the more tainted the possible jurors become, which makes it damn near impossible for someone to get a fair trial. Impossible for the defense and impossible for the prosecution. So what you're saying there, I understand why it would benefit me and you to get all that information, but how would it benefit the actual case? And the whole point here is we're talking about somebody's life. We already had one person lost their life, and now we're talking about the rest of this kid's life, which he may spend in jail or he may spend free, depending on the outcome. And if he has a tainted jury pool, that could help him more than it's supposed to, or it could hurt him more than it's supposed to. So the more information gets put out, it only makes that situation worse. Jonesy said, yeah, I agree. They don't know. You just knee-jerk reaction. Yes, pretty much. Strategy said, if he can prove he was in imminent danger or a threat, unlike him, then he can prove self-defense in Texas. Well, that sounds simple, but it ain't that simple. That's the reason why these trials take months. What you're saying sounds simple on social media, but in the court of law, there's a whole lot more that goes to it than that. Janice said, if he was in fear for his life, he could have walked away, gotten an adult, so many options. That is, yes, that's something that some people are saying. Again, it's not that simple either, because when you're 17 years of age, Janice, it appears you're a female, but when you're a male at 17 years of age and another kid is accosting you physically, you're not walking away. You're not going to get an adult. We're not in first grade. All right. If I'm 17 and somebody is approaching me physically, then I'm going to defend myself physically. Now, am I going to pull out a knife and stab you? I probably don't have a knife with me to stab you with, but it's not as simple as, well, he could have just walked away. And the same is not as simple as, or Austin could have kept his hands to himself. That all these things that many of you are saying sounds really good when you're talking about it with distance. But is that what you actually did when you were 17? The answer is no, especially if you're a male. Nakia Key, thank you for the follow. Janice said, instead he went and got his knife. Well, he already had the knife with him. Can't imagine. Anyway, this can be self-defense. He was outside leave. I don't know what that means, but it depends on why he had the knife. We do need to find that out. We won't know till he goes to court. And there's some testimony, well, not testimony, but evidence submitted by the prosecution and defense why he had that knife. I doubt he takes a stand. Taking a stand probably wouldn't be good for him. Your favorite fat boy, thanks for the follow. Mercy said, I won't help his case being known as someone who gets in fights often. That is true. But we got to see what gets proven in court. What goes on the official record of the case, not what is being said on TikTok and Instagram. We need to know what goes on the official record, i.e. somebody getting on the stand and testifying that, not what somebody claimed is the situation. So there's a lot of stories floating around about both kids, the white kid and the black kid. The only thing I believe to be true when people are saying shit on the internet is if you go somewhere and you will take the stand and you will attest to that under oath. If you didn't say it under oath, I don't believe you. Y'all know what the saying is. Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. Danny said, if it's thrown out, you must have it expunged or it stays on your record. When I say thrown out, what I mean is the case gets thrown out because you were never convicted. That's what I mean. Not thrown out like after you were convicted. I'm talking about no conviction because the case just didn't even go through. Like if a witness won't show up or the prosecution just says, we're going to drop this case. That happens all the time. Strategy Brand said it has to be proportional and not excessive. The knife will be a separate charge regardless. Again, we'll see. We'll see. And these are things that we talked about in the previous conversations on this subject. Ms. Thunder, good morning to you. Jen Mardez said the defense asked for $150K. The judge ruled $250K. Okay, good information. I didn't know that was the case, but either way, it was already ruled that he could bail out. It was just set at $1 million before. Frank said the bail was not excessive. Anyone facing murder charge has a minimum of $1 million bail. Is that true, Frank? In what jurisdiction? Where'd you get that number from, and how do you know that to be true? Frank, we're going to fact check you, or at least what we believe to be the facts. Let's see. Is there a minimum amount of bail that needs to be set when someone is facing a murder charge, specifically in the state of Texas? All right, so let's see. Frank, we are checking you on what you said there. It's taking time to think here. Looking, searching. All right, while we're waiting for that, we'll come back. Rudy says, I see it as fair. So, all right, in the state of Texas, there is no statewide mandatory minimum bail amount specifically set for murder charges. They're determined by judges on a case-by-case basis, guided by legal standards and judicial discretion. So, Frank, I don't know where you got that claim from, but it is not true. Almond said the encounter was 30 seconds. Well, it sounds like it, but we'll see when it gets to court. We'll see when that video comes out as well. A lot of you are making a lot of assertions about this situation when we don't even have all the information. Where y'all getting the confidence to make these assertions when you don't even know what happened? We know a little bit about what happened. We know there was a confrontation. We know the black kid had a knife. We know he stabbed the white kid. We know the white kid died. That's generally what we know to be true. Everything else is what we have accepted as truth, but we don't know if it's true. Lady Blue said if it was black on black, white on white, it would not have made news at all. It was a race thing. Lady Blue, that's not quite correct. Your first sentence is correct. Your second sentence is incorrect. If it was black on black, white on white, no, it would not be a story. I wouldn't be talking about it, and you would not either. I don't know if you're black or white. But to say it was a race thing just because a black person stabbed a white person is not true. It's a racial discussion because it was black on white. But we cannot assert that the reason that the confrontation occurred is just because a black kid and a white kid decided they were just going to go at each other, or a black kid decided, I'm going to stab a white boy today, or the white boy decided, I'm going to start an issue with a black kid today. I don't think that's the case. And we can't assert that because we don't know it to be true. And first of all. And second of all, half of the people involved in this situation are not allowed to speak for themselves. So the only way we would know that to be true, Lady Blue, is if Karmelo, the black kid, goes to court and says, I did it because he was white, which I strongly doubt. But let's see. We'll see if that happens. But we have to have him say that, which he's not going to say because I strongly doubt he takes a stand. So how will we ever notice? So let's see where we are. I lost my spot in the comments. Let's see. No, not here. Okay, we got a lot of comments here, as I expected. Carla said the entire situation is just so sad. One person lost their life and another person has destroyed his. Yeah, well, we don't know if he destroyed it yet. Depending on how this case works out, maybe it might not be destroyed, but it is sad. It is sad because his family has to deal with that. He's going to have that on his name for the rest of his life, whether he gets off or not, this black kid. And, yeah, of course, the other family, they lost a son. And neither one of them is even 18 years old yet. Danny said it doesn't need to be about race at all. Yes, Danny, it doesn't. And I don't think this confrontation was about race. However, it is going to get a lot of attention because of race. But I don't think the reason it happened is because the white boy had a problem with black kids or the black kid had a problem with white boys. I don't think that's the reason. Almond says, funny how you say a fight is not a crime, yet here we are. A fight is not a crime. Nothing becomes a crime until the police are involved and they suspect the crime occurred. And then it still has to be adjudicated in court. That's the definition of crime. A fight is not a crime. If two people go to the boxing gym and we get in the ring and spar, we're fighting. Is that a crime? No. It depends on the circumstances around the fight as to whether it's a crime or not. If two kids fight in the street, in the neighborhood, 2 8-year-olds get in a fist fight, is that a crime? No. Nobody's going to jail. Nobody's even calling the cops. Kago said, but how can it be self-defense when the other person wasn't armed? Well, self-defense doesn't necessarily mean that both people have to have the same weapons. Self-defense just means you're defending yourself against what you consider to be a clear and present danger. And then you have to argue that in court and you got to prove it to the jury. That's what it comes down to. If you can prove to the jury that you felt like you were in danger, it's kind of like if Shaquille O'Neal breaks into your house and you're 5'2" female and you don't have a man in the house, and Shaquille O'Neal breaks into your house that looks like he's going to try to rob and pillage your home, and you pull out a gun and shoot him, could you argue self-defense? Yes, you can argue it, and you might be successful. So again, he doesn't have to have a weapon. Just the fact that he's his size and you're your size is enough of a weapon in certain jurisdictions. So it depends on how you argue it in court. I'm just using that as a blanket example. The GOAT says, I think the video helps Karmelo's case of self-defense in the court of public opinion. Well, have we seen the video yet? The GOAT? I haven't seen the video. Has any of you seen the video? So I don't know what you're talking about, unless you saw the video. and you know something I don't know. The GOAT said, would the sheer size of the victim play a role here? Was over 6 feet tall and outweighed Karmelo by 100 pounds. Are you sure that's true? The GOAT. 100 pounds? I saw pictures of both of these kids. Which one was 100 pounds more than the other one? I'm not sure that's true, the GOAT. Are you throwing information out here that's not accurate? 100 pounds? That means one of them would have to be like 250 and the other one would be around 150. Are you sure that's the size of the kid? I'm not sure he was that much bigger. One was bigger than the other, but I don't think he was that much bigger. 100 pounds? The GOAT. Where'd you get this information? All right, now we're going to hold you accountable to justify what you're saying. So you mentioned the video and you said 100-pound difference. Now we're going to hold you accountable. So moderators, y'all see the GOAT with another comment. I need to hear his response to that because you said two questionable things there. But if you can back it up, then I'm listening. Cindy said BLM would have been there if roles were reversed. Sorry, you know it's true. BLM's there now. Cindy, BLM is already there. I don't know if you know. BLM is hard in there, and it's not BLM like the organization. BLM, the organization, was a scam, and it's pretty much over. They got all their money out of the black people who donated to them, and the white people who donated to them, and the corporations. Now they're off living in their fourth house. But BLM, as far as the idea, BLM, yeah, they're the defense team for this black kid, Cindy. So you said BLM would have been there. They are there, just not in the same form that you expected. Lolo girl said captain of football and track team and great GPA. Yes, correct. You're talking about the black kid, right? Yes, that's what I've heard. So both of these kids were highly respected, it seems, and accomplished as athletes and students amongst their peers. So those kind of cancel out as far as I'm concerned. I mean, in court is not going to work that way. But Mahoney's World said, I agree. He is still just a kid. Yeah, he's 17 years old. Where am I? Where was I? A reasonable person would have brandished the knife, not a death stab in the chest. Well, Almond, it's easy to say what a reasonable person would do when you're not the person in the situation. The GOAT said, 1 sec, I'll prove a source. A source of what? What are you going to prove? Because I can't click on any links, the GOAT. So just explain to me why you're saying what you're saying. I don't need a source. I just need it. When you say there's a 100-pound difference, tell me the weights of the two kids. And when you mention the video, so per the arrest report, Karmelo is 5'9", 130. Okay, so Austin was about 230. Okay. That's what I'm asking. And the other one was you mentioned the video. So what's your info on the video? And as far as Almond 555, a reasonable person would have brandished the knife, not a death stab. Again, that sounds really, really smart, Almond. But here you are on the internet talking about it. You're not in the heat of the moment situation. Danny says, there's a thing about self-defense while committing a crime like unlawful possession of a weapon. Well, it depends on if he was committing a crime or not. You have to prove that what he did was a crime. And there's also, if you're going to use self-defense, you have to prove that there was unlawful, violent force being used against you if you're going to use deadly force to defend yourself. That's why we have lawyers. Poet said it was self-defense. We'll see. Bindu said, I think they should ask the court for mercy. Doesn't sound like that's the direction that they're going, but we don't know. Again, we got to get in court and find out. The GOAT said, no, per Karmelo arrest record, they said he's 5'7" and 157. All right, so now we can't even agree on how much this kid weighed. All right, so let's see if we can find out. See, this is the thing. This is the thing about the internet, folks. So we're going to find out how much this guy weighed. And we got to find out the weight of the other kid. How much did the other kid weigh? Can we agree on that? So I looked up Carmelo Anthony's weight and they give me the basketball player. So let's see if we can find this kid, Carmelo Anthony. So I'm just trying to browse here, but I'm not seeing. Let's see. Carmelo Anthony. Let's see if we can get some info on this guy. So looking at this picture of him, there's a photo of him from Twitter/X. Here's the photo of him standing next to he's standing at a football camp where they measure you. I've been to sports camps and they measure you just like this. According to this chart, this is a picture of him from Twitter. He is 6'1", close to 6'2". As you all can see. All y'all see that? 6'1", 6'2", according to this right here. If this is actually him. Maybe this is not him. But let's see. That's the thing about the internet in these situations. We don't know what actually happened here. This might not even be accurate information itself. So I'm giving you all that with a grain of salt. So according to Okay, so who are they talking about here? Carmelo Anthony is a student at Frisco Memorial High School who's a prominent athlete for the football team. He also participated in track. He has an athlete's profile on X, platform formerly known as Twitter. As per his Huddle profile, is this the right person? According to what I'm reading on this website, Times Now News. According to this website, Anthony is 6 feet and 225 pounds and played middle linebacker. That's about the size of a middle linebacker. 6 feet, 225 pounds. That's what it's saying right here. Now, again, I heard other people say he was only 5'9", 130 pounds. So this is a very, this is the internet for you folks. Let's see if we can find more information about him. 4.0 student, and then I see the race hustlers talking about him. So this race hustler said, this person was talking about how the white boys were threatening him allegedly. So, all right. So now we need to figure out what the size of this kid actually is. And I'm not finding anything definitive about his size. So I think this is an open case that we have not yet solved. Strategy Brand said knife will get him a separate charge regardless. Again, we'll see. Almond said he had his hand in his bag, was handling the knife when he said to Austin, punch me and find out. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure we even agree on what got said in the situation. We do agree he had a knife with him and that he used it. Lucinda said no, because most of us carry something. What do you mean? Most of who's us? And when you say something, what do you mean? R. Philly Inc. said he could be from the hood. Doesn't seem like it. Tala 25, thanks for the follow. Sarif Jafar said he didn't show up there, but he had to protect himself because Texas is a racist state. Sarifa, you got to come with something better than that. The whole state of Texas is a racist state. I don't know about that one. So a lot of black people and white people cohabitating, not in the same house, but living amongst each other in Texas, and there's no problems. I would not go that far. That's too much of a blanket statement. Judge by One said he didn't. He is just a young man with a pocket knife. My brothers had those when we was children. It depends on the size of the knife, which I don't think we officially know the size of the knife yet. Number two, what you do with the knife also matters, and the size of the knife also matters. So we need to get that information. We need to get that information before we make a judgment. David said, we can just go around killing people just for touching us. Is what you're saying make that make sense? Well, David, this is what we know is a straw man. So here's a straw man of the day, which is David, who says we can just go around killing people just for touching us. Did I say that? Everybody knows that I didn't say that. So David, please come correct. Lucinda said they had a pass with that statement being made. We don't know that to be 100% true yet, Lucinda. Unless it's in the official report coming out of the court, do not believe it. Lady V says something was said that caused him to use the knives. Maybe that's Austin's twin brother lied. We don't know. No, it wasn't I don't think there's a discrepancy as to something being said. It is generally accepted by both sides of this situation, being Austin's brother, that Austin said to the kid some form of, you can't sit here or get out of here. And the kid says something back. And there was somewhat of a verbal altercation. And at some point it turned physical. Austin did something that led Karmelo to stabbing him. That's all we know. We don't know the details of even that part yet. And again, one of the people in this situation is not allowed to sell his side of the story. So President Chicken said, basically, don't do what the media and one side does. I say it as someone who was killed by another. Well, what the media does, the reason why we're having this conversation, just to be fair. The GOAT said it's telling that the video hasn't been released. Well, the GOAT, you just made an assertion that the video told you something. Now you're saying the video hasn't been released. All right, so now your credibility is in question. Roger said, next generation is narrating the story. We will never know the truth. We'll know the truth because they got to go to court. That's when you find out the truth. Again, you put your hand on the Bible, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's when we find out, not on social media. Med said, was there confirmation that the video does in fact exist? According to what the police said, is that they confiscated a bunch of phones and that those phones combined do have footage of the altercation. That's all they said. But they haven't put any of that out yet. And honestly, just to keep it real, it would be beneficial for someone like myself and anyone on social media publishing to see the video before the case. But if the state is smart and if they can manage it, they shouldn't even put the video out, because all it's going to do is taint the jury pool. They shouldn't put the video out at all if they can manage to do that. I don't think they'll be able to do it, so they're going to have to put it out, and it may be public demand for it as well. And then as soon as one person gets it, then the video is going to go out. So that's the situation. Alma said, I agree. However, it's interesting the black community is justifying and praise of Melo's actions. Well, why is it the black community? It's not about the black community. There are some people who are black who are justifying it and not even necessarily praising his actions. There are some black people doing that, but I wouldn't say the black community, because that sounds like you're talking about all black people, and that's definitely not the case. I'm black, for example, and I don't justify and praise his actions. It was not a smart thing for him to do, whether he ends up innocent or not. It wasn't smart for him because he has to pay with his time, he has to pay with his reputation, and he has to pay money coming out of somebody's pocket for him to defend himself in court. All of those things are the costs of his situation. Even if he gets found innocent, it's going to cost him a significant chunk of his very short life up to this point. So, no, I would not say that people are praising him. Some people are justifying it because they are looking at it as self-defense. Is there a reasonable argument for self-defense? The answer is yes, there is. Even if you disagree, that doesn't mean it's not a reasonable argument. Lisa, thank you for sharing the live. Lucinda said, why it had to be an overweight issue. Well, that was just happened to be the episode that I just recently put out. The GOAT says, anything that prevents the video from being released prior to trial. Yeah, the authorities not letting the video get out. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. There's going to be too much public demand for it. So I think they'll probably release it, but I don't think that's going to help them in getting a fair trial in either side. As soon as that video comes out, it's going to taint the jury pool even further. It's going to make it harder for them to get a fair case here. Your mom watches TikTok, says an objective live. Finally, I'm glad you found me. Yes, I am objective every day, or at least I try to be. Good morning, Kudo. I appreciate you all. Kay said, I've been neutral and definitely looking at it as right versus wrong. Well, the courts get to decide that. That's the thing. Okay, the courts get to decide whether it was right or wrong. That's the reason why we have court. Roger says, next generation will control the trial. Who's next generation? What does that mean? Jennifer, thank you for the heart. Cammie said, why don't we wait to see what the courts say instead of just backing someone because of skin color? Because we're human, Cammie. The reason why people are jumping in on it based on race is because they're human beings, and this is what human beings do. This is how the internet is. Internet's been like this for 20 years. I've been publishing since 2005. It was like this then, it's like this now. It's just crazier now because everybody's on it. Heather said, do you think the trial should be moved to another location or state to get a non-biased jury? Absolutely. Yes. I don't know if they're going to move it to another state, but they need to move it to another jurisdiction besides outside of where it actually happened. They cannot get a non-biased jury in that town. They should know better. So hopefully they're smart enough to do that. Marky says, some bails go off. It looks like you're going to come up with it. Yeah, depending on who you are, because they got to make the bail hurt to get your attention. Lucinda said, I think the media created a narrative that caused people to respond the way individuals did. Well, Lucinda, the media these days is us. The media is not the news networks. These days, the media is us. We're the media. So you're right. The media did, but I think you're talking about a different media than what I just described. Kudo said, they need to let the man do his job. You're talking about Trump? Alma said, Democrats have made Trump the most relevant and resilient president in American history. That might be true. Pamela said, the decisions he's making is unconstitutional to the people. That's what some say. The GOAT said, we're not concerned the idea that the government, deporting Americans to El Salvador? It depends on why they deported them. Not if they deported them, but why they deported them. Molly said, Bernie's only accomplishment was becoming a millionaire. He hated millionaires before he became one. Well, according to him, he still is fighting oligarchy. So I don't know. Brandy said, what I think of the Trump medical record saying he's 6'3" and 225. Well, do you have any evidence to prove otherwise? You could be 225 with a belly. It just depends on how much everything weighs. People could be the same weight and look very, very different. When I'm in the gym, as an example, most people think I weigh a lot more than I do just because of my physique. So just looking at somebody, you can't really judge how much they weigh, especially a man. Tarika said, track always has tents. Yes, exactly. Which is what I was saying. Rugers, what is next generation? What are you talking about? Carla said, grammar and spelling classes available on podcasts. Yes, that's true. Lynn said they also use tents like locker room to keep your personal belongings in it as well. Yes, some people mentioned that. Kudo said, have you heard the claims that Metcalf's father was arrested for assault? Assault has no bearing on the case. I have not heard that. Is it interesting? Maybe. But what bearing does it have on the case? As you said, I don't think it matters. Carlos said, on my way to doctor appointment. All right, shout out to the doctors. Almond says, so people need to take note and teach their children appropriately on the mentally and be prepared. Well, you can only teach your kids so much. They still get to make their own decisions once they go out into the world. That's what it is. The Talk Isle said, judges and lawyers are frauds. No FARA license, no oaths of officer. What are you referring to? Rob said, God will be his final judge. That's true. Almond said, Melo didn't have a scratch on him. The encounter lasted 30 seconds. What does that have to do with anything? I don't know. Is that in the police report? He didn't have a scratch on him? It doesn't sound like he did, but I don't know if you know that to be true or are you just asserting something? Cindy said he took the knife to do harm, not to cut a cake. False binary, Cindy. There are many other things you could have a knife for besides those two things. Dim said, should have his bail been reduced that low? I mean, it's $250,000 is not low. That's a lot of money. Rob said, you said it best. If it was black on black or white on white, you wouldn't care. Nobody would care if it was black on black or white on white. Sincere said, jury pool is already tainted. Yeah, well, that's why they have jury selection. So they get to find the people who might not, even if people know about the case, they can still be an objective jury member. The GOAT said that's why it hasn't been released. Well, there are many reasons why it hasn't been released. Lynn said, we don't know yet how physical it was. That is correct. We don't know. Rob said he entered that specific tent for a reason, not his team tent. Well, you put question marks there, which is the right thing to do because we don't know. Again, we don't know why he entered that tent. Maybe he just wanted to sit down. Maybe he knew somebody over there. Maybe he just saw an empty seat and he just wanted to chill. We don't know. Mickey Dash said, no 17-year-old boy just walks away. Well, some of them do, but to just say he could have just walked away as if it was that simple is not a thing. Sandwich and Chip said it was premeditated. I'm in Texas, the city south of Frisco. I know the story, cold blood. To say that something was premeditated, Sandwich and Chips, doesn't matter where you live. You could have been right there and saw the whole thing happen. To say that it's premeditated means you understand what was going on in the mind of the defendant before he did what he did. So the fact that you live close to the area where it happened, Sandwich and Chips, is completely irrelevant to your assertion that it was premeditated. For something to be premeditated, you have to be able to read the mind of the person who did it. And I don't believe you have that capability. I've yet to meet a human being who has the ability to read somebody else's mind. So where are you getting this claim from? Cindy said, I already answered that one. Sabrina says, it seems like we have a lot of lawyers with no law degree in the comments. Well, that's what happens when you got a legal situation. Everyone has an opinion, which is fine. People can have an opinion. And even if someone does have a law degree, we can't adjudicate the case until we know all the facts. At which point, I mean, right now, we don't have most of the facts we don't have. So if we're going off of that, honestly, nobody should be offering an opinion. If we're going off of the facts, even a lawyer can't offer an opinion because you ain't got all the facts. Even a lawyer needs to get all the facts before they can argue a case. None of us have all the facts right now. Only people who have all the facts is the prosecution. They don't even have all the facts. And the defense. They have the most facts, but none of them has all of them because we still got to hear from the witnesses. So we don't really know anything right now. Cindy says, should have kept him in juvenile detention till court date. No, I don't think so. I disagree. Sandra said they're going to take a plea. That's why they switched attorneys to an ex-prosecutor from Texas. Well, it depends on what the plea is because the prosecution gets to decide what the plea is. They don't get to dictate it. They get offered a plea if they offer a plea. Sandra said it isn't a race thing. It is a very diverse school. That doesn't mean it can't be a race issue, Sandwich and Chips. Just because the school is diverse doesn't mean you can't have a race issue. It actually could mean there's more possibility for a race issue because it's a diverse school. I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong, but your frame here is not accurate. Dirty Riva said, thank you for being a voice for reason in this horrible situation. You're welcome. Cindy said, people need to stop talking about this and let it play out in court. No one knows what really happened. Cindy, are you new to the internet? This is what we do on the internet. We talk about stuff even though we can't really draw a conclusion. That's what the internet's for. Leroy said, I bet plea deal to manslaughter in 5 to 8 years. Yeah, we'll see if they offer that. If the court offers it. Now, then the question is, are they going to accept it? Which might happen, but it'd be interesting just to see what they offer and what their final actual charge is. We don't know yet. Cindy said, all the pics on social media with him holding weapons is not going to help him look good. It depends on how it gets presented and if it gets presented also. All of you also had to remember that the judge's job in a jury trial is to decide what is allowed as admissible to the jury and what is not allowed. For example, in the Derek Chauvin trial, the guy in Minneapolis, the knee on the neck, George Floyd, there were many pieces of evidence that his defense team wanted to submit to the jury as evidence to defend Derek Chauvin, and the judge would not allow them to do it. So the judge gets to determine what is admissible in court and what is not. So those images of him holding weapons, Cindy, the judge might say those have nothing to do with the case, therefore you can't use them. The judge could make that ruling. So it depends. Not everything we see on social media is even going to make it into the case. Sabrina said, ego is high in teenage boys. I have a 17-year-old son. I have to talk to him about it all the time. Yeah, and you know who should really needs to talk to him about it is his father, Sabrina. And Vegria said, should the parents be to blamed? No, the parents are going to be reflected upon either way because that's your kid. You got a minor child and they just took a knife to school, number one, stabbed somebody with it, number two. They already look bad. To blame? No, not unless one of them told him to take the knife to school and stab somebody, which I doubt. But no, they're not going to be blamed, but they're going to be judged harshly because that's your kid and look what your kid did. So they already got to live with that. Thomas said the uses of race into this case is cleared by the defendant's lawyer. Well, if that's going to work for the defendant, then he should use race, Thomas Williamson. If I was his defense attorney and I believe making this case more about race is going to help my client win the case, I am going to use race. That's the game when you're a lawyer. Your job is to use anything and everything you can to help your client win their case. Johnny Cochran introduced race in the OJ case. Was he wrong? No, he was right because that worked. That was part of the case. He made it about race because that would help push the jury to rule in favor of his client. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a lawyer. Dimple said, I agree with you. People on social media making it about race is so sad. Well, people in general are going to make it about race because that's just where we are in America right now. Cindy said, guess he had the knife to cut a cake. See what you did there. Leroy said, Anthony never stated he feared for his life. Stated when? He's not going to get on the stand. His lawyer is going to have to argue that in court. It's not necessarily what he said to the cops. It's what he argues in court. What he said to the cops matters, but just because he didn't say it doesn't mean it's not true. And his lawyer can still argue it. Kudo said, there's a video you've seen, hard to tell if it's real or not. And it's probably not. The cops will release the official video at some point. That's the video I want to see. Yvette, thank you for the follow. The GOAT says, no, I already responded to that one. Let's see. Roger said, Next Generation is narrating the story. Who is Next Generation? Rogers, you keep saying that. Who is that? So now we can't even agree on what the police report says. Some people say it says he was 157 pounds and others saying 130 pounds. So all right, can you mofos read? Which one is it? All right, what does the arrest report actually say? I don't remember that number being that small. C followed the live creator. Thank you. Jay Wiz said, I learned a lot today. Thank you. Bama fan said he won't be able to prove self-defense. Well, that's the reason why we have trials. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but it's too early to make that assertion. Lady D says, my question is, why did Hunter tell WFAA and Fox News two different stories? We'll probably find out. He might take the stand. He might not. Rashim said their sports bios give their height and weight. Okay, and the survey says what? So we haven't even agreed on the facts here of what size each of these kids were. Austin is 6'1", 225. Can somebody else verify that? I need to hear 2 or 3 of you say the same heights and the same weights, and then we can talk about it as if we agree upon it, but I keep hearing different numbers. Every time I see someone throw a number out, it's different. Lady said something was said that caused him to use a knife. Maybe that's Austin twin brother lied. Well, it depends on what he said. What I heard the twin brother say is that Karmelo started talking reckless. That's what he said. He started talking reckless. Talking reckless is not asserting exactly what he said. Maddie said, I don't think 5'9", 130 sounds right. That'd be a very skinny football player. Yes, I agree. Just PS said, I got it from the jail. I have a picture of him in jail. You got what from the jail? Can we agree to the height and the weight of these two boys? The GOAT says the police report states 5'9". Does anybody else verify that? Jay Ray says, well, it's about time somebody else noticed from the boy's mugshot that he is over 6 feet tall. Again, so we got 5'9" and 6 feet. That's a nice size difference. Which one is it? Antoinette, thank you for the rose. Barbie says, ironic that White would defend the white deceased kid if the roles are reversed, tell the truth. Well, we don't know. Grogor says 225. Okay, so we still haven't figured this out yet. Mickey says, easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. No one knows exactly what they would have done. Yes, it's very easy to say what somebody should have done in a heat of the moment situation, physical confrontation. All sounds good with everybody saying what the other person could have did. But when you're in it, it's a whole different world. Ginger said, Texas is not a racist state. There's no such thing as a racist state. There are no racist states. There are racist people. There's no racist state. Let's see. There's a lot of comments here. A lot of comments. Let's see. Where am I? All right. I will tell you all right now. We're not getting through all these comments today. It's a lot of them. We are 80K here. Can we get to 100K likes? Thank you, Carla, for pushing everybody for the likes. Can we get to 100K? Dory Shinsley says, where was the outrage for the CEO that was unallowed when they sent him money for lawyer and canteen? Yeah, good question. Dirty Reva said, what do you think the sentence will be for the young man that's never been in trouble? Depends on what he gets convicted of. And it depends on what they argue in court. So we got to find all those out. It's too early to make that, even think about that. What is going to be the actual charge? What are they going to argue? And what does he get convicted of? Because he might have multiple charges. He might get fined not guilty for one, but guilty for another. Destiny says, let's teach our kids it's okay to take someone out, take their life because of a push. Thank you, Karmelo. We know it's okay now. Destiny, I see your attempt at sarcasm, but let's have a more mature discussion here. Chad Smith said, the kid sat in the opposing section with a knife. I believe that's intent. That's not intent. Just because I have a knife or I have a gun does not mean I intend to use it. I just got it. And if you're allowed to carry it, you're allowed to carry it, even if you're not allowed to carry it. If I have an illegal gun on my waist and I go somewhere and then I end up and I go somewhere, it doesn't mean I'm going to use it. Just because I have it does not mean I'm going to use it. Go says, two-part statement because TT limits your characters. You just didn't read it in order. Well, again, I'm still questioning your credibility here because you're stating things to be true that one has already been proven not true. You said the video proved something. You haven't seen the video. And we're still trying to verify the height and weight of each of these kids. Jalen says Karmelo shouldn't even be on bail. We already addressed that, Jalen. We already addressed that. Hunter said, well said, with all the yap, though, it's easy to forget that. Yes, well, thank you. Jalen said this is a stand your ground case. Not exactly. It depends on how you argue it and if you can prove it to a jury. Wire said, what if he didn't do nothing and he died? What do you mean? Who are you talking about? Cindy said, Karmelo let his temperature get him in a lot of trouble. That I can agree with, Cindy. Antoinette said, people saying Austin got what he deserved sick. Yeah, I understand why people have that position, but we need to find out the details of what exactly happened. Nikki said, no criminal record under 18, two-parent household might get probation. We'll see. Depends on the case. We got to hear the arguments in court first. Too early for that. Lucinda said, I don't think they should release it because they will twist it. Well, you can't twist video footage. I mean, if it's the actual footage, what you going to twist about it? I just think it's going to taint the jury pool. That's the part that they should be concerned about. Papa said, are you allowed to bring a knife to school sporting event? I don't know. I don't work at the school. Ask somebody who works there. Even if he's not allowed, again, The bigger case here is the murder thing. Then the knife is a separate situation. Somebody already made that comment. Alman said Austin was unarmed. The encounter was 30 seconds. Maybe they should look at the definition of self-defense. It depends on what you're defending against and who was involved. It depends on a lot of mitigating factors besides just this black and white that many of you are trying to frame this as. It's not that black and white. Jalen said, I praise that brave young man for standing up for himself. All right, I know you're kind of trolling my comments, Jalen, but we've already kind of gotten past that point. You're right. Deanna, thank you for the follow. As far as right now, we are just, I'm just reading comments. We're talking about this Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf, Texas stabbing situation. Antoinette said, you fight, not stab. End of the day, two families are forever changed. Well, that is a good point. And Antoinette, Karmelo is going to have to, his defense is going to have to explain why he had that knife and why he used it. That must be explained. That's the crux of the entire case is why did he use a knife? Why did he have it? And then why did he use it? Nikki said, any weapon on school ground is a felony. All right, fair enough. The thing is, that ain't the biggest of his problems. He got a bigger fish to fry, which is murder, not the weapon. The weapon is a thing, but that's not the issue that he has on his biggest issue on his hands that somebody's dead and he's charged. Jalen said, you make the decision to fight, you might lose your life. That's right. And you make the decision to do something that costs somebody else their life, even if you didn't mean to do it, you might lose yours too. Wire said, if Anthony was the one who died, would this debate still go on? Absolutely. Because had a white person killed a black person, would there be a debate? Wire doctor, you can answer that question yourself. Hey, you back? You want to join me? You want to sit up here?
No, please.
Okay.
Daddy, did you see what the other room was?
It's out there in the living room.
Where?
I don't know. Let's see. Emily said, I got an idea. Don't bring knives to high school track meets. Again, we already got past that part. Everybody. So some of you who are coming in late, we already kind of gotten over these points. Always Gigi said, Melo's actions changed his family lives forever. His family had to move. Did they move? Is that verified? USMC said, Karmelo will probably be charged with manslaughter. We'll see. Again, that's what we're waiting on. The GOAT said, did I say it depends on why the government is deporting American citizens? Well, right now we're talking about the Karmelo thing. I don't know what you're referring to. Emily says, it has everything to do with it. And yes, it's in the police report. What are you referring to, Emily? I didn't catch it. Let's see. Emily said, how about Austin was a hero because he saved all the other lives under that tent? Now that we know, Emily, no. That's you're extrapolating a whole lot right there. No. I reject that frame. Austin was a hero because he saved all the other lives? No. That would only be if you can prove that Karmelo was looking to stab a whole bunch of people and Austin just jumped in front of it. That doesn't seem like is what happened. Unless you have some information that we don't have. Michael 333, thank you for the salute. So there are numerous coaches. Alman said numerous coaches and parents there. Melo wasn't cornered in an alley self-defense. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to run, especially in a state that has a stand your ground law. But you also have to justify why you use deadly force. If someone else was using force against you, you have to prove that they were using unlawful deadly force at the same time, and many other factors. Again, this is a multivariate problem, folks. I talked about this last week. This whole case is not as simple as anything any of you could write in a comment in the stream. It is a multivariate case, which means multiple variables must be considered to determine an outcome. None of the cases, any of these simple comments that any of you are making. Destiny said he will get off because the judge that has been assigned to the case. I don't think so. The judge doesn't determine the outcome. The jury does. Conservative Joe said, I heard they have video evidence. They have said that there is video, but they haven't put it out yet. So we want to see it. Emily said, the thing we do know is you bought a knife to a track meet. Yes, that has been established. But it depends on why he bought it, what he's. Cindy said, if he hadn't took it to use it, he would have never pulled it out. Cindy, that's 100% false. There are people who walk around with guns on their hips all day, every day, and they don't shoot anybody. So just because you have it does not mean you intend to use it. So, Cindy, I suggest you remix that comment. That comment is absolutely incorrect. Dory Shinsley said, there is no law against sitting down and watching a track practice. There was no sign posted. Just because there's not a law, Dory, does not mean somebody can't check you on it. Just because there's not a law on anything doesn't mean that somebody can't approach you and say, hey, don't do that. Like if you're out at the bar, Dory, what's that? You're a female. If you're out at the bar with your man and another man approaches you and tries to talk to you and your man walks up to that man and says, hey, that's my girl, leave her alone. That doesn't mean the other guy's breaking the law, but your man still has the right to check him. So it doesn't have to be a law against something for somebody to check you for doing what you did. That's a false binary. Emily said, premeditated. Who brings a knife to a track meet without intent? He had intent. False. If I walk around with a gun on my hip all day and I go to the mall, I go to the grocery store, I go get me some food at a restaurant, I go to the park and walk around and feed the birds, does that mean I intend to shoot somebody? No. Just because you have it does not mean you intend to use it. That's false. Tia Marie said, my child doesn't turn around and ask if someone's okay if this was premeditated. What does that mean? Candy said, walking away is just that simple. He took a knife. Yeah, it sounds simple when you're talking about it and you're not the one in the situation, and especially if you're a female. If you're a male, if you're a female, you can't really speak to what a male is supposed to do when two males are in a direct confrontation in real life. Sounds good on the internet as a woman to say what a man should do when confronted. Not a whole different world when you're the actual man and you're there. Miss Jordan said it right. Saying you live in Texas is dumb. Yes, it is. Emily said, no shit, he was thinking about it before he did it. Again, do you have the ability to read minds, Emily? Because if you do, you're wasting your talent on TikTok. If you have the ability to read minds, I can tell you a lot of ways you can make a lot of money very quickly. And these comments is not one of them. You don't have the ability to read minds. You can't say somebody else was premeditating anything. USMC said, touching or grabbing someone in Texas is not justified deadly force. So it depends on how they touched you or grabbed you, but generally you are correct. Dimple said, they said those pictures were not Photoshopped. What pictures? And generally, I don't really care about pictures. I want to see the video. Mel said, do you believe that it was self-defense? It's not about what I believe. I believe they're going to try to claim self-defense, but they're going to have an uphill battle trying to prove self-defense. In the state of Texas, if you use deadly force in self-defense, you must prove the unlawful deadly force is being used against you, and you were just defending yourself against that. So there's a continuum of force. There's a certain level of force you can use if someone comes at you, but you can't just use any amount of force against anything. It's like if someone touches you on the shoulder when you're walking past them at the park and you pull out a gun and shoot them and you say, hey, self-defense, they touched me. You are way above the continuum of force that was used against you. So it's going to be hard for you to justify pulling out your gun. Now, if you wipe their hand off your shoulder, that continuum of force, that's a lot lower on the continuum. So it depends on what you did and what was done to you. We don't know all the details of that yet as to what was being done to him first. And we can't go off of what people are saying on Facebook. We got to go off of what is actually true, which is what gets proven in court under oath. Okay, so I've said that for like the 100th time in the last 2 weeks. It has to be proven under oath in court, not on the internet. Jalen, stop spamming my comments or you're about to get blocked. Dion said, trying to take his bag is attempted robbery. Not necessarily. It depends on what happened before that, what was said, how it was done, and what can be proven. So it depends on all of those things. But again, that's a false binary, what you just threw out there. All of you are trying to make this case sound so simple that it can be adjudicated with a comment or two. If it was that simple, then we wouldn't have lawyers and we wouldn't have court cases. All of you could just defend yourselves in court. There's a reason the legal profession exists, because there's a whole lot of laws on the books that must be argued in these cases. It's not as simple as, oh, he did this, so I could do that, and that's it. Not that simple. Duck Dawson said there's no might he needs to take the stand. Well, the prosecution or the defense may call him to the stand because he was there. He was a witness. And there's a bunch of other witnesses. All of the witnesses are going to get called to possibly take the stand. That's why this case is going to take forever, because there were probably a bunch of kids around and all of them are going to get called to the stand. Hate Cooking said he's not 225. Come on, he's 16. That doesn't mean anything. You could be 16 and 300 pounds. His age alone is not a reason to say he couldn't be 225. Allegria said, if that was your son, how would you handle the situation? Well, which kid are we talking about? Which one are we talking about? If we're talking about the black kid, I would wonder how the hell he ended up bringing a knife to school in the first place, and how did I allow that to happen? How did he get to the point that he was bringing that knife? And I would ask him, what the hell were you bringing a knife for? What were you doing? What was the issue? Kudo said, Max Rep has him at 5'11", 162. Who is him? Y'all confuse me with the pronouns here. Nikki said, my brother was lineman, was 225. At what age, Nikki? Austin stats on Football Forum is 6'1", 225. Okay, so 6'1", 225 for Austin. So Kudo, are you saying is that Karmelo, 5'11", 162? Alman said, there's a picture on the internet. Mel is standing in front of a height chart. He is 6 feet. Yes, I just showed that picture 10 minutes ago. Rashim said, they say Karmelo was 130, but I believe sports bios give theirs outdated. I think he was 5'9". So, again, we can't even decide on what his size was yet. Duck Dawson said, Hunter needs to testify under oath because he got on the news talking. That's not the reason why he needs to testify. He needs to testify because he was there, not because he got on the news. Even if he didn't speak to the news, he would still be asked to testify because he's an eyewitness. Eyewitnesses will be called to testify, and there's probably a bunch of them. And they're all kids. That's going to make this case even murkier. You got a bunch of high school kids testifying. It'd be one thing is a bunch of 35-year-old adults. But a bunch of kids, it makes this even trickier than what it is. Shotzi says, what's the height and weight of anyone have to do with it? It does have something to do with it because if Shaquille O'Neal is trying to beat up your 5-foot-tall grandmother, that's different than 2 6-feet people fighting with each other. So it has a lot to do with it. USMC said, all right, answered that one. Jen said, I never carried no weapon to school and I've had my fair share of fights. All right, that's fine, Jen. That doesn't mean someone else is wrong to do so if they so choose to. Now, the laws in the area also factor in, but just because you never carried a weapon does not mean somebody else is wrong if they decide to do so. Jay Ray said, I live in Texas. My youngest son is married to a white woman, so how is it racist? Well, Jay Ray, first of all, the state of Texas is not racist. I already made that clear. Secondly, just because your son is married to a white woman does not mean the state can't be racist. That's called an anecdotal fallacy. Fast says, aren't there rules you're not supposed to have weapons on campus? Probably. But again, he got bigger fish to fry than having weapons on campus. His biggest fish is that he has a murder charge. Stay-at-home mom said, where's the outrage for the kids that die? I missed that one. T-Bone says, should the other brother be charged? With what? Charged with what? As far as we know, he didn't commit a crime or is not even suspected of a crime. If he was, then he would have got arrested that day. What did he do? Schultz, he said, the best part is when we get closer to the trial and so much more evidence comes up. Well, that's what's supposed to happen. I mean, that's how it's supposed to go. We're supposed to get the evidence at trial, not on the internet. That's the whole point. SA8 said he wasn't allowed to carry B for real. Wasn't allowed to carry what? A knife? Again, that's not the issue. The issue here is the murder. The issue is not carrying a knife. I understand that there are probably rules against him having a weapon, but is that his biggest fish to fry right now? No, the biggest fish to fry is they had a murder charge on his or hanging over his head. If you had a carrying a knife charge at school and you had a murder charge, which one are you more concerned about? I'd be more concerned about the murder, personally. Nikki said, weapons weren't allowed on school grounds. That's a felony. Again, which one you worried about? The felony or the murder charge? Austin football roster say 6 feet, 200. All right, so we don't know the size of these kids. I think that's our conclusion here. We don't know what size they were. Yeah, we're at 100K. Thank you, everybody. We got to 100K here today. How long till trial? You never know. That's the reason why I tell all you stay out the legal system. You don't know when the trial is going to happen. I think it's going to happen pretty quickly, but sometimes they take longer. Like Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, got arrested like last summer. He's just now going to trial in 3 weeks. James Earl said the big story is both families lost a child. No, that's not the big story. That's a reality, but is that the big story? No. Nana Cat said if it was a revered race, the city of Frisco would be on fire. I don't know about that. J Dub said hate that is all we see over and over again. People are making their own stories up. Well, welcome to the internet. That's what they do. Stay-at-home mom says if roles were switched, the entire city would be rioting right now. Maybe. Depends on the circumstances. Terry Boston mom said, my question is, why does anyone carry anything they do not need, especially at that age? Well, need? Terry, define need. That's a hard one to pass through. Need. Again, there are people who walk around with legal firearms all day. Do they need it? No. So just because you carry it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. You don't have to need something. You can want to carry something and carry it if you so choose. That's the law in the United States of America. You have the right to bear arms. You don't have to need it and you don't have to use it, but you have a right to have it if you have all the legal clearances. Beautiful Rebel said, if he was afraid of being bullied, why did he go sit on the other side and pick a fight? Well, who said he was afraid of being bullied? Again, you're going off of internet conjecture. That's not something that's been accepted as a truth of the situation. So you're asking the question is based on an assumption. Therefore, I can't answer it. Nikki said, right, but that's another charge itself. I understand, but that's not the conversation. That's not what we're talking about here today. So all of you talking about he might have a felony or broke a rule by having a knife on campus. Okay. But again, what's the bigger fish that needs to be fried here? And we need to find out if he gets charged with that. Has he been charged with that? The answer is no, he hasn't.
Daddy, do you have any tape for this side? So the car just go here.
Can you tape? Can you bring me that roll of tape over there? I'll put it on for you.
This one?
Yes, bring it over here. So USMC said, work on your game. You're well educated. Hope everyone listens to you. Yes, my actual name is Dre, D-R-E, and my last name is Baldwin. B-A-L-D-W-I-N. Work on your game is the name of my brand and company. So is this what you want?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I want.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Close the door, son. Son, come close this door. And Bishop said, yes, because it was premeditated. Someone was getting stabbed. Just because somebody got stabbed does not mean it was premeditated. That's false. Dango said, money makes it complex. Well, money makes everything complex. T-Bone said the judge hasn't been assigned yet. That's correct. I'm in the state of Florida.
No, but Daddy, this
Yes.
side needs tape too.
But if I put tape on that side, then you can't put anything inside of it because it's going to be closed on both ends. Is that what you want?
Yes.
Okay. Y'all heard him, right? This is on the record. What's so funny?
Nothing. It's nothing.
I don't think you even understood what I said. But you're going to find out in a minute because now this is taped up. Now you can't put anything inside of it.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Close the door. Okay, so bye. Okay, so not out of school. We don't carry guns. Everyone knows you can't take a weapon to school. Yes, I get it. He hasn't even been charged with that yet. Because again, everybody's frying the big fish, which is the dead body. T-Bone said, how about his Miranda rights? They don't actually have to say them out loud to you. Some people think that they don't actually have to tell you. They don't have to say your Miranda rights out loud. You have them, but they don't have to say them to you. And Bishop says, to a high school scoring event, any weapons on the school ground is premeditated. False. That's not true. Marco said, former Texas cop, if there was security, he would have been arrested on the spot for having the knife. There were cops there. He didn't get arrested for the knife. He got arrested for the dead body. And the fact that you're a former Texas cop has nothing to do with this. If they knew he had it, first of all, they would have to see that he has it. Usually when people have a weapon, they conceal it. So his knife was in his bag. It's not like the cops are stopping every person and looking in their bags. And I guess they didn't have a metal detector there. But just because he had the knife, how would the cop know that he has a knife if it's in his bag and they're not checking bags? There's no way the cop would even know that. And he did get arrested on the spot. He got arrested for the murder, not for having the knife. And from what I hear, he has not been charged for having the knife. Almond said the variables, Austin was unarmed and never punched Melo. It was verbal, can't justify this. Oh, first of all, that's a false statement because there are multiple variables. There are hundreds of variables in this case. There's not one variable. And the fact that somebody was unarmed does not mean that you could not be violating somebody else's rights by use of force. Again, Shaquille O'Neal and your 5-foot grandmother. Your 5-foot grandmother could still feel like deadly force is being used against her because of the size of the opponent. Now, again, the difference between these two kids is not that big, but the fact that you're framing it this way that is a falsehood. That's not true. Terica said the tents are for each team's personal items. Usually other teams should not be under team tent. Yes, that's generally the accepted idea. And that's going to be entered in court. That's why this case is going to take forever because they're going to go over every single detail. USMC said, I can still carry on paralyzed from the chest down. If someone shows me, I can't do anything. Okay. Teresa says, personal valuables are in the tent. That's why each team has their own tent. Yeah, I get it. He went in there with a knife. Yes, he did go in there with a knife, but we don't know why. And we can't just say he was thinking about I'm just going to stab anybody who comes up to me. We can't assert that. We don't know. King said, with the knowledge the public now has, this case reached the first degree murder standards. We don't have any knowledge, Kings. 5150. We don't know anything. I said this about 20 minutes ago. We got about 2% of the information right now. 2%. That's it. And we're having all this conversation over 2% of information. Most people draw conclusions based on knowing very little, but with a lot of authority, interestingly enough. Mary said, did he sustain any injuries? I don't know. We don't know. This is what we don't know, folks. Lynn said, going in opposing team tent, can't just leave when asked to. Again, sounds good, Lynn, with distance and you not being the person in the situation. We don't know why he went in there. Maybe he knew somebody in there. Maybe somebody told him, meet me there. And he was just waiting for them. They didn't show up yet. We don't know. SAH mom said, you can't kill someone just because he grabbed your bag. TF. Again, false binary. There's 100 different variables in this case, not just 2. Marco said when he warned him, that's the premeditation. It depends on how it's being measured by the courts. And also, if you feel threatened and you warn someone of something, that doesn't make it premeditated. So, Marco, legally, you are off. Cindy said, I missed that. Winter said, why so little information available? Well, welcome to the world. Most people just go and react to shit when they don't even know what happened yet. They get a little bit of information and people just start reacting. That's what the internet is for. People to start reacting when they have no information. This is a legal situation. The court is not required to tell us all the information that they are gathering, but we will get it all if we just pay attention to the case when it goes to trial. That's how you know the actual information. Everything being talked about right now, we have a handful of things we know to be true. Everything else is just us talking shit. That's what this is. Most of us don't know nearly as much as some of you are making these assertions based on knowing absolutely nothing. So let's see. Dion, stop spamming my comments with the same thing. I already read that comment one time. Any of you have a comment on something, post it one time, maybe twice. Don't post it more than twice. I'm going to have to start kicking some of y'all out of the room. Moderators, y'all see anybody spamming my comments, kick them out. Y'all mucking up my comments by posting the same thing over and over again. Amanda said, here in Baltimore, we don't give bail to anyone for murder one. Who's we? You mean the justice system? Is that a law on the books, or are you just saying it kind of like colloquially? USMC said we had to wait for the evidence to come out. Decisions up to 12 jurors. Yes, that's the situation. J-Dub says, because now I know people who say they will stab someone if they touch them. Well, again, don't believe everything you hear on the internet. Barb said the gossip train has to stop is misleading. Well, Barb, that's never going to happen. You better learn how to ride the gossip train and just learn how to navigate it, as I'm doing right now. I'm giving you a demonstration of how to ride the gossip train, but you can't stop it, because to stop it, that means you have to take everybody's phones away, shut down all social media, and not allow people to speak. So if you can do that, please tell me how you plan on doing it. Tucci Man said, give me 50K. I can get you off LOL. Now you better try 150K. You're going to need more than that. Business says, does the legality? Barbie said, that's what I've been saying. Way more details will come. Look how long it took for Floyd. Yeah, the Floyd case took about almost a year. It was about 9 months from the time it happened to the time of the verdict. And even then, they didn't even allow all the evidence in court. If they allowed all the evidence, he probably would have been found not guilty. Derek Chauvin. They didn't even allow the admission of the evidence that it was literally in the handbook back when he got hired to do exactly what he did to George Floyd. If the guy it seems to be like going crazy or was on drugs and it seems to be kind of overdoing it, the suspect, you put him on the ground, you put your knee between his shoulder blades to stabilize him, and then you call EMS to come get him. What happened in that case, 2 things. First of all, EMS went to the wrong location. They probably could have saved George Floyd's life had they shown up at the right place on time. That was number one. That's why he was sitting there for so long, because EMS went the wrong way. Number 2 is that the judge did not allow them to admit that evidence into the case, that literally was in the employee handbook for police to do exactly what that white cop did. They wouldn't allow that as evidence in the case. So, of course, he's going to get found guilty. That was a crazy case. Amanda said he shouldn't have gotten the bail. I think he should have. Nikki said my brother was 16. Well, see, there you go. Ann said the judge should not have lowered his bail. He is a murderer. Well, being a murderer is not necessarily illegal. There's a legal way to murder and there's an illegal way to murder. That's why we have court cases. J Dubs, how would you handle if you were Austin's dad? Handle what? What am I supposed to do? My son's already dead. What am I supposed to do? Joanna said the truth will come out soon. Maybe. And said there was no bullying, stop spreading misinformation. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as misinformation. It's just people who don't know what they're talking about or people who are just straight up lying. But there's no misinformation. I don't like that term because it's a term that people use to try to shut down hearing anything that they don't like. But if you think somebody is wrong or inaccurate, then just say that. But misinformation, disinformation, I'm not a fan of those terms. Kimberly said, bullies always get what they deserve. Keep your hands to yourself. Well, we don't know if anybody was being bullied in this situation. We don't know if there was any bullying happening at all. Barb said, my question, was he actually being bullied? Exactly, right after that. So we don't know. Let's see. Sean Allen said, damn, let's just start carrying guns to school with your logic. No, sarcasm, Sean, I see, but let's have a adult conversation here. T-Bone, stop posting the same comment. Again, if any of y'all keep spamming my comments posting the same thing, I'm gonna have to kick you out. J-Dub said they are saying the brothers both jumped him. I don't care who is they, first of all, and I don't care what they are saying. I want to know what's actually true, which is what you testify in court, not what you say on social media. Okay, bye-bye. Phil says, my son, I get revenge. He'd be looking over his shoulder the rest of his life. Okay. Well, then you would end up in jail too, Phil, or dead, one or the other. If that's what you want to do, though. I'm not here to argue against you. Nurse said, I love how these TikTok viewers have all passed the bar and are giving their raw opinions. It's not even so much that, because even if you had passed the bar and have a legal degree, a law degree, we don't have enough information to offer any judgment yet. And a lawyer would any trained lawyer would tell you exactly the things that I've been saying to you. I'm not even a lawyer, but they would tell you the same things. Is that we don't have enough information. We can't draw any conclusions yet. We can only go for what we know. And right now, we don't know a lot. The GOAT said, Greg Willis to present the trial to grand jury by end of June. Is that true? Yeah, that's pretty quick. Ginger said, how would you defend him with the facts known? How would you prosecute? No, we don't have enough facts yet. I wouldn't defend or prosecute him yet because I need all the information. No lawyer would go in and just say, I'm going to defend you or I would prosecute you until we get more information, or even though someone has agreed to be his lawyer and there is a prosecutor on the case, they are not starting the trial yet because they both still need to gather a ton of information before they can actually stand in front of a court and make an argument. No one goes and just decides on a side of a situation until you have all the information. Even if you are already the defense attorney, you got to figure out how you're going to defend him. How are you going to play this? And that requires getting all the information. And Melo is a decent person's life has forever changed his internal struggle of taking a life. I would agree with that. R. Zek said, do you think a judge will take into consideration that this sets precedent for future kids? It's an interesting question. I don't know if the judge is going to be thinking about that. I think no matter what the judge does, it sets precedent for future cases, not future kids, but future cases. Every case could be used as precedent for a later case. Barbie, my child is a boy, not a girl. V says, similar to school shooters, parents getting charged. Not the same thing. In California, this happened in Texas. Nikki said they would use that in process of trial, though. No knife, no stabbing. They're going to use everything in the process of trial. I mean, they're going to use there are going to be hundreds of things entered into this case. Jay Ray, thank you. Barbie said more details will come. As far as I'm hearing, there were no assigned seats. Okay, that's fine. That doesn't justify anything that happened on either side of this conflict. Mike said, damn shame that people don't have any respect for each other anymore. I feel bad for the families. Yeah. Mama Witt says, so earlier you said they don't have to read him his rights. Does that go for a minor as well? No, that's a good question. You should find out the answer. I don't know. But they don't have to read you your Miranda rights if you're arrested. I know that is true. I don't know if it applies to minors, but I know it applies to adults. Trisha said this judge is known to not do a thorough job on reading the documents. How do you know that? Bat Poe said, guy on here arguing on Karmelo can just cite the Daniel Penny case and get free. Thoughts? What guy? I don't know. You should ask that guy. I don't know who you're talking about. Not me. I'm not that guy. Cindy said, Medea says you have to be read. Your Miranda rights. Haha. Amanda said we have metal detectors at high school sports events here in Baltimore. Well, apparently they didn't have it in that event in Texas. Barbie said chief of police said Austin did sucker punch him. I would need to see that verified, Barbie. I haven't seen that verified, so I can't go off your word on that one. Queen said, I've seen all eating utensils that attract me because they bring food and they are there all day. Yeah, but they might be plastic. All right, not the kind that you can kill somebody with, Queen. Plastic knives. Barbie said, Chief said Austin was the one who made Karmelo a victim, basically. I haven't heard that verified either, Barbie. So as far as I'm concerned, what you're saying is conjecture. You would have to prove that. R. He said the chief of police post was from a fake account confirmed by the actual police department. So, Barbie, is that what you're going off? That fake post that was on social media, like the day after it happened? That post I saw, that is fake. I think everybody found out that was fake within like 2 hours. So, Barbie, if that's what you're going off of, you have been misinformed. You have been misled, bamboozled, led astray. Luca said, based on a police report, is not self-defense. Well, that's the reason why they have court cases. The police report is not the entire case. That's just what the cops wrote down based on their recollection of the situation. And neither one, and the cop had forgot to turn on his body cam too. So a lot of the body cam footage didn't get recorded. El Maestro, is there a video? We have heard that there is, but we haven't seen it yet. D said, taking a knife and baiting a confrontation smells pretty premeditated to me. Well, go join the jury. And baiting a confrontation, you would have to prove that. We know he brought a knife, but did he bait a confrontation? We don't know that. You would have to prove that in court, not just assert it on social media. He was friends with people from there and supposedly Austin. Some say. Barbie said when he warned him, Austin should have backed off. Well, you should join the defense team. The GOAT said, PR says pouring rain probably under the tent to stay dry. But they have tents at these events even when it's sunny outside. The whole purpose of the tent is to protect you from the weather. It can be hot, it can be rainy, it can be anything. I do know that they did say it was raining. That we can agree on. It was raining. So there's another fact we all agree on. Someone said, I read the police report. Yes, I did. HS said, you're still cursing as an adult. Yes, I'm still cursing.
Daddy, I'm going to outside.
Okay, I'll see you later. Don't throw these. Pick those up. Luca, you're spamming my comments. I've given warnings to everybody about spamming my comments.
No more warnings. Bye.
All right, see you later.
No more warnings.
Way more details will come. Look how long it took. Yes, exactly. Could this be a good thing with little information as far as this trial is concerned? No. All the information will come out when the trial happens. That's the whole point. They don't have to tell us. The defense and the prosecution don't have to tell us what they're going to do. We would just have to pay attention to the trial and see what they actually said. Everyone's entitled to a reasonable bond as long as they're not a flight risk. And there are a couple other factors too, Nikki. I laid those out here today. There were a couple factors that I laid out. I'll tell you again what it was. Not a flight risk does not pose a danger to the community and has strong ties to the community in the state of Texas specifically. So it's more than just one thing. Swa said, wait, what make you think the truth only comes out in court? The closest thing we're going to get to the truth is court, is my actual statement. We don't even know if that's all the truth. What makes me think the truth comes out in court is because people have to swear under oath that they are telling the truth. Doesn't mean they can't still lie, but I much more believe you if you're under oath telling me a story than if you just tell me a story on social media. I don't believe anything I hear on social media. So let's see. A bunch of you saying the same things I've already responded to, so I'm not going to keep reading these. Let's see. T-Bone said, did Melo admit his guilt by saying he did it? No, he admitted that he did it. That doesn't mean he's guilty of a crime. Those are two different things. You can murder someone and be innocent. You can murder someone and go to jail. It depends on why you did it and everything that comes with it. Tasha Bennett says, just came in, what happened? We're talking about the Texas case and the kid getting lower bail. Luca said, if you go out the police report, there's zero chance of self-defense. Okay, you should get a law degree and join the prosecution if it's that simple. But it's not that simple. Barbie says, someone who knows both sides came on and said they were friends with each other. Well, whoever that someone is, if that's true, they'll be called to stand under oath and testify what they know. Until then, I don't believe anything I hear on the internet. And that's my response to any of you telling me what you heard. I don't care what any of you heard. Until they get on the stand and say it under oath, I don't believe it. The GOAT said, you said it was in the handbook for showing him to put his knee in the neck, not on the neck, in between the shoulder blades. And yes, it was in the handbook. They showed it in a documentary called The Burning of Minneapolis, or whatever it was called. The Fall of Minneapolis. It's literally in the handbook. They show it to you on the video. They literally show you a picture of someone doing the exact thing Derek Chauvin was doing, and it wasn't on the neck. It was in between the shoulder blades. It literally says it in the documentation. Nikki said, everyone is against innocent until proven guilty until they're on the chopping block. Not everyone, but I get your point. Lee said, there are too many opinions with so little facts, a lot of racism and misinformation people that weren't there. Well, everyone's entitled to an opinion, Lee. It's too many assertions. Many people are asserting things as if they solved the case when there's like 1,000 different pieces of evidence they had to be entered into the case. It's not going to come down to one or two things, or three or four things, or 5 or 6 things. Barbie said, none of us have all the details. Exactly. And the details must be put into complete context. That's the purpose of a court case. It's not just having all the details, it's putting them into proper context. Mickey said the knee was on the neck of Floyd, not between the shoulder blades. Well, according to the courts, he ended up getting convicted, whether you believe it was on the neck or whatever other reason. He ended up going to jail. I would say he should be fighting to get another trial. That's what I would say. I believe his jury pool was tainted. For no other reason, just that alone. People want to say the knee was on the neck. Well, how is a man going to say out of his mouth while the knee is on his neck that he can't breathe? If the knee's on your neck, that means you can't breathe. If you can't breathe, how are you speaking? Mickey, you ever tried to speak while not being able to breathe? Said Karmelo didn't have previous count, not a fight risk. We already addressed that. I addressed that probably 2 hours ago. So some of you are coming in late. You're saying things that have already been stated. So I'm not going to keep reading these. Let's see what else we got. I'm trying to see if I see anything new that I haven't already addressed. B said, I know Hunter Metcalf changed the story of events in these 2 different interviews. Well, it doesn't matter if you change the story in the interview. The media can't take you to jail. It's what he said to authorities and what he says on the stand that matters the most, not what he says on TV. James said, if he was so scared he needed a knife, why didn't he tell his parents? Well, that's a false frame. That's a straw man frame. Because he didn't say that. So you're asking the question based on an assumption that you don't have the actual information to verify.
Excuse me, I have questions for you.
Yes.
Why am stopping mommy?
I don't know. Where is she? T-Bone said, do you think Melo snitched on himself? No. He said he did it. I mean, he did it. That doesn't mean he's going to go to jail. Again, you can do it and get off. Doesn't mean you're going to jail.
Daddy, she's in that room.
Barbie said, no, I already answered that one. Yes.
She's in that room. She's in that room. You want to go check her out?
In a couple minutes. I got to finish. Let me finish this. V said, you wouldn't understand this isn't justifiable homicide. I have not drawn any conclusions. All right, so it seems like half of you think that I'm on one side and half of you think I'm on another side. I'm not on either side. The side that I'm on is that none of you have enough information, nor do I have enough information to draw any conclusions about this case.
Do you have information?
Get from under there. Jackie said, why is he out on bail? Because he had bail and he put the money up. I mean, what are you asking? Let's see. All right, a couple more questions, then we'll wrap this up. The GOAT said, just watch the video, and 3 minutes after Floyd moved. Well, that case is already adjudicated. I think he should try to get another case. Whatever any of you thinks about it, again, doesn't matter unless you're going to be on the jury. It doesn't really matter. I think he should try to get another trial simply because his jury pool was tainted. Again, for no other reason, just on that alone, he should be trying to get another trial, and his lawyer should be working on it right now. Monkey Business said, as an asthmatic, I always wonder how people are jumping around and yelling they can't breathe. Well, he was saying he can't breathe when he was still standing up. So the whole I can't breathe thing was clearly something that he maybe does sometimes. Cindy said, can they order a polygraph? I don't know. Do they care? I mean, is that necessary is the question. Because again, he didn't give a false statement to police. Someone said he changed his story to the media. Maybe he did. I don't know if that's true, but even if he did, so what? Lying to the media is not a crime. So what's the polygraph for? I could lie to the media if I want to. I can go on CNN and lie right now. What are they going to do? Take me to court? Carla said, people are so emotional. You need to be more logical. Well, keep dreaming, Carla. That's not going to happen. B says, what he says publicly can be used in court. Yes, it can, but that doesn't mean he's going to go to jail for it. Lying to the media is not a crime. Lying to the police is a crime. Lying on oath is a crime. Under oath is a crime. Lying to the media is not a crime. Barbie says, so in all, do you think he should be free or not? Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Now, that's what we know to be true. Should he be free? Now, you're asking me to make a judgment call. I will make my judgment based on what's actually happened, which is he was granted bail. He posted bail. Now he is quote unquote free and under house arrest. So that's what happened. It's not about what I think he should get or not get. Who cares what I think he should get or not get? I'm not the judge. Cindy said Trump will pardon him, but we know what would happen if he did. Trump can't pardon. You can't get pardoned on state charges by a federal official. Trump is federal. He has state charges. Derek Chauvin has 20 plus years state charge. Only the governor could pardon him. The president cannot pardon a state charge. He can only pardon a federal charge. Barbie said politicians lie to the media all the time. Exactly. Lying to the media is not a crime. I can lie to the media as much as I want. They could just not like me and talk trash about me, but so what? B said, I'm saying his words can help Karmelo's case. Everything that happened in this situation will be used by both sides. Okay, so everybody heard that? Everything that happened will be used by both sides. It just depends on how you frame it. You can take the exact same piece of information and frame it to help the prosecution. Take that same information and frame it to help the defense, depending on how you present it. That's the reason why we have lawyers. The way they choose to present the case plays a huge role in how it ends up being perceived by the jury. And whoever's better at the framing is the one who wins. That's how the legal system works. It's all about how you frame the conversation. Communication is everything. User said one CNN reporter lied about being in war and got fired. Well, getting fired is not the same as going to jail. It's two different things. Barbie said, I've heard so many stories. I'd like to hear your information on this. I gave it to you. I don't have that much information. I got the same amount of information as all of you got. Many of you are asserting information that you don't even have. I'm making it clear that I don't have all the information. I'm just telling you the parts that we do know, and I'm just responding to a lot of nonsense that I see many of you saying in the comments that you don't even know what you're talking about, but you're asserting things to be true that are not true. Barbie said, what's the story you have? The details. You need to rewatch this live because I'm going on damn near 3 hours now, Barbie. So I would suggest you start back at the beginning and watch the whole thing. It's all on my YouTube channel. The link is in my profile. After this live ends, the whole video will be on my YouTube. Alma said, Melo's words will harm his case. Well, we'll see. Again, this is all we can go off of, but we will see. B said, hopefully Anthony's attorneys will frame Hunter's words well in court. Well, they're going to need more than that. If he's going to get off, they're going to need more than framing Hunter's words. They're going to need a whole lot more than that. That's not going to be enough for him to walk away free. Cindy, I appreciate you. All right, everybody. I'll do these lives Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. If you like this one, come back tomorrow. If you didn't like this one, come back tomorrow. If you're not sure about this one, come back tomorrow. Amy said, can you say self-defense if you provoked by saying do it and see what happens, punch me and see what happens? Well, you can say whatever you want, Amy. It's what you can prove in court is what matters. I can say anything, but if you can prove it in court, it's a different story. Barbara says, it's nice to hear from a lawyer about it rather than people who think they are. Barbara, I'm not a lawyer. I have this. Some people think I'm a lawyer because I'm dressed like one and I try to be logical and objective, but I'm actually not a lawyer. But I understand why people think I am, because I am not nearly as emotional and reactive to information as most human beings are. So I don't know. I still got to figure out a way I can leverage this that people think I'm a lawyer, even though I'm not. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to hear you speak. It's not what you know, is what you can prove. Exactly. Yes, that's what it is. Not what you know is what you can prove, and it's not even what you think is what you can prove. And you got to prove it to other people. And a judge is a human. The jury are humans, and humans take things subjectively, no matter how objective they try to be. That's what makes court cases tricky. This is why. This is the main thing all of you need to understand from everything that we're talking about here today. Stay out of court. All right, you want to stay out of the criminal justice system, because even if you believe what you did is justified, you are not sure that you can convince 12 people that it's justified. You might still go to jail, even if you think you were 100% justified. You could still end up in jail. That's why you want to stay out of court. Stay out of the justice system. Okay, even if you're a Second Amendment weapon carrier, or you carry a knife, or you can fight, be careful when you use that. All right, Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, if you are not in danger, do not fight. All right, do not put yourself in a line of fire just because of your pride or your ego, especially important for men. I did a whole episode on this on my show, by the way. I got a show that comes out every day. It's called Work on Your Game. Y'all can find it on Apple, Spotify, all your favorite platforms. Let me see if I can pull it up. It looks like this. This is the Apple version. Apple, Spotify. It's called Work on Your Game. Comes out every single day. It's about 20, 30 minutes per episode. I talk about these kind of things. So if you like this one, again, come back tomorrow for my next one. And as Carla said, it's my superpower. That's what I do. So I appreciate you, Jay Ray. David said, more than likely a plea deal will be reached. Yeah, we'll find out. That depends. If the defense thinks they can walk free, why take the plea deal? Why take 5 years or 8 years or 10 years if you can get no years? So it seems. Georgia said, you seem really educated on the legal system, thought you was a lawyer. Well, Georgia, what I'm educated on is just objectivity and logic. Those are my superpowers, is being objective and logical, and my ability to articulate it. I didn't even study law in college. I have no pre-law training. I have no legal training. As I said, I just know how to objectively and logically articulate things. So again, people hear that and they assume, and then they see me dressed like this and they assume I must be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm actually a business coach, and consultant, author, speaker, do all those things. That's what I actually do. So Freedom said, if you claim innocence, why plead is admitting guilt? Well, technically you're right. That is admitting guilt. But what you do it because you don't want to gamble. You do it because you don't want to gamble, because the gamble is, yes, my son's waiting for me. So come here. Can you say hi to the audience here before we wrap up? So the gamble is this. Let's say that the court says, hey, Dre, you're on trial for murder, and we're asking for 20 years. The plea deal is 5 years. So if I go to trial and fight it, I either lose and get 20, or I win and get 0. But if I don't go to trial and don't gamble, I just take 5. I could just decide, let me just take the 5 instead of gambling and ending up with 20. That's a question that you have to ask yourself. That's a very important question. So that's the situation. So everybody, I need to go to the bathroom. I need to eat lunch, and I got work to do. So everybody, I appreciate your time here today. Make sure you follow my YouTube. You'll see the replay of this on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram. My Instagram link is also on my profile on TikTok. And that's that. Everybody have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow. Work on your game. We are out of here.